ready to go when you are, sir. Okay. Did you fix the? Yes. Yes. So we don't need to send invites to those. No. Everything should be smooth sailing for this one.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting of Monday, May 18, 2020. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call, please.
Albertson?
Here.
Bueller?
Here.
Hoyer?
Here.
Helene?
Here.
Lallam?
Here.
Manti? Here. Rudensky?
Here.
Roby?
Here.
Vilhauer?
Here.
Y? Absent? Thank you.
All right, thank you. The first item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. I have a motion to approve by Rudemsky, second by Hoyer. Any discussion? Councilman Roby?
Can I make a suggestion? I have to recuse myself from item D. Might I suggest we move that to item 4.5 as a separate issue?
I'm sorry, you wanted to move item, which item?
I have to recuse myself from item 4D on the consent agenda. My suggestion was we move that to item 4.5, and then I can vote on the consent agenda and recuse myself from the other one, just a suggestion.
I'll have a separate item. Okay, I will have to take another motion, Sarah. I'll move this item 4D to item 4.5.
Mayor? This
Consent.
is Kristen.
Yes,
I think
Kristen.
if you're going to move it, the only place that you can really move it to is actually on the regular agenda. I don't know if we could create,
A second
I think
consent.
it's either got to be a consent agenda or it's got to be on the regular agenda. Matt can chime in if he sees different, but
Yeah, just move it to the regular agenda. It wouldn't necessarily need to be a motion. You as the chairperson, Mayor, can suggest that movement. And I would also suggest going forward, since it's a pretty hard line about recusals related to alcohol issues, not only with the current council, but going forward, there's more than likely always going to be somebody with that conflict. So I would suggest all alcohol-related approvals never be put on the consent agenda.
Okay, so I'll move that one. I'll just go ahead and move that one to the regular agenda. And we'll call it item 7. I'm going to just put it at the end so I don't get all mixed up. 7N. How about that?
Thank you.
Yep. And don't let me forget that, Kristen.
okay.
I made a note on the agenda. All right, with that removed.
Mayor?
Yes.
One other discussion point. Again, it's not starting such a hassle, but the big grant on the approval of the consent agenda, item 4H. Again, just a disclosure, I'm on the DOT commission. I'm involved with those at the state level. I'm not going to recuse myself. I'm just disclosing that connection. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other discussion? All right, I will look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and opposed signify by saying nay. Roll call vote, please, Kristen.
Albertson?
Aye.
Bueller?
Aye.
Hoyer?
Aye.
Helene?
Aye.
Lallam?
All right.
Manti? Aye. Rudensky?
Aye.
Roby?
Aye.
Vilhauer?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Item 5 is the public comment period, and this is the time for anyone who would like to make a public comment to step forward and do so. If you'd like to speak, please state your name into the microphone for the record and say request permission to speak. If your comment is related to an agenda item, I prefer you wait until that agenda item is taken up by the council. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Hearing none, we'll move on. Item 6 is approval of the agenda, and before we approve it, I would like to move item B so that it is after item D. And that puts two items of similar nature together on the agenda. And with that, look for a motion.
So moved.
Okay, get a motion by Hoyer,
Second.
second by Vilhauer. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Roll call vote, please.
Albertson,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Hoyer,
Aye.
Colleen,
Aye.
Lalum,
Aye.
Manti. Aye. Rudensky,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Vilhauer.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We're on item 7, the regular agenda. A is Alma First Edition, the annexation and zoning. And the first item is approval of resolution number 20-24, annexation of a tract of land contiguous to the city of Watertown, South Dakota, to be known as the Alma First Edition. Heath, will you please explain this for us?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So, before the council tonight is an annexation resolution for the Alma First Edition. Mr. Alma is the owner of the property, currently located outside the city limits, but is contiguous to the city limits. He has petitioned to annex and zone approximately 3 acres of his property that he owns. This is the current location of Big Shots Fireworks. As the council recalls, we've recently gone through some zoning ordinance amendments over the past several months. And one of those zoning amendments that we made was made for the allowance of warehousing, packaging, and sales of fireworks to certain I-1 properties within the community that met certain criteria. That zoning ordinance passed and is on our books now today and in effect. So upon annexation and subsequent rezoning, if both are approved, Mr. Alma's property would be located in an I-1 district, and the use that he currently has would become approved under a conditional use permit application at the BOA at the subsequent Planning Commission BOA meeting. Again, this particular action is just the annexation resolution. It's the first step of a couple here, and the subsequent action would be the zoning of that property to I-1 light industrial. Urban planner Brandy Hatton is online with us this evening. If you have any questions, her or I would be glad to help out.
Thank you, Heath. I need a motion to approve the resolution for the annexation.
So moved.
Have a motion by Vilhauer
Second.
and a second by Hoyer. And now I will entertain any questions or comments. And it looks like there are none. I don't see any hands up.
Mayor, if I could add one more comment for the
Sure.
record.
Absolutely.
This annexation does fulfill Mr. Alma's agreement with the city to annex. He entered into an annexation agreement about 5 years ago for the purposes of receiving water service to his facility. And that agreement was exercised between him, municipal utilities, and the city. And in following through with those requirements to be annexed within 5 years, everything's in line to meet the deadlines of that agreement. So I just wanted to point that out as well.
Thank you. Does that spark any questions or comments? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Roll call vote, please, Kristen?
Okay. Albertson,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Hoyer,
Aye.
Colleen,
Aye.
Slalom,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Vilhauer.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, item 7A2 is the second reading of ordinance number 20-16, establishment of the zoning designation of I-1 Light Industrial District for the area of land to be known upon annexation as the Alma First Edition. So we've already had a little discussion of that, and I'll look for a motion, then I'll open the public hearing.
So moved.
I have a motion by Hoyer
Second.
and a second by Rademski. And Heath, did you want to say anything more about the or about the zoning?
I don't, but I'll quick share my map just for record on the video and reference. Shared my screen here. This is the property that's hatched here on this map is what is being proposed to be annexed and zoned. And that would become the I-1 zoned parcel upon approval.
Thank you. And that's on the far east side of town, immediately adjacent to Highway 212. All right. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak about this, or online or connected by phone? If so, please state your name and request permission to speak. Hearing no one, I will close the public hearing and entertain council discussion. Is there anyone that wants to make a comment or a question? Councilman Vilhauer?
Heath, this was passed, both the annexation and the zoning was passed unanimously by the Planning Commission recently. And I also see there were certified mailings that went out to adjacent property owners. Any objections noted by anyone on this?
None that I've been aware of. I'll confirm that. If you could confirm that, please, Brandy.
Yep, no, there were not.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Roll call vote, Kristen?
Albertson,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Hoyer,
Aye.
Colleen,
Aye.
Slalom,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Vilhauer.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item is C, second reading of ordinance 20-15, amending section 13.0303 of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown regarding the regulation of fireworks in public parks at Lake Compesca.
So moved.
I have a motion by Vilhauer and a second by Holeen. And I will ask Matt to tell us a little bit about this first.
Thanks, Mayor. This ordinance revision came about after the park board recently voted to not allow the recreational use of fireworks in City Park, in Stokes Thomas Lake City Park this year. And so the idea here is that we would amend the ordinance that would give the police department the ability to actually write a warning ticket or a citation based on city ordinance if folks aren't heeding that directive from the park board. We also took the opportunity, since we were addressing this ordinance, to add in that Memorial Park is also under the jurisdiction of the county commission, and already mentioned was Sandy Shore State Park being under the directive of the South Dakota Game Fish and Parks. And I would turn it over to TK if he had any more input or wanted to make any comments on the board's action there.
Okay, Terry Kelly, want to add to this?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mayor. Again, with this, as Matt alluded to, the board brought this up. brought it forth for the council to make it enforceable. And just for the council's awareness, I have received more positive comments on this in support of the action. I did receive one concern, and that was a neighbor in the Forsberg Park area. That wasn't really a highly utilized fireworks area, and their concern was with City Park closing, if that'll become, I won't call it the new City Park, but those are the comments I've heard from the public as feedback. But the board is definitely in support of the council's approval of this second reading.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you. And so again, the board took the action which prohibits the fireworks. The action that the council is taking gives the city the ability to have the police enforce this action. So, Councilman Hoyer?
I guess I would just ask so the public can know as well, because sometimes it gets a little misconstrued in the media. But where can people go to shoot off fireworks in a public location? Is there anywhere on the lake right now that they can, other than Forsberg Park, which was just mentioned?
Yes, Jackson Park is another public spot at the lake. The entire lake that was annexed at that time, that's where you can shoot fireworks. The only place in town that people can do that in the city limits. And so the public areas are the public parks. You need permission at the other parks, like the Sandy Shores requires state permission. Memorial Park requires county permission. And so if someone were to do a show here, they could probably get special permission from the park board. Is that true, Matt? If the park board allowed, they could give discretionary approval.
Correct. Yeah, it would allow for one-off approval if there's a show or something like that.
Yeah, in the park, but just for people shooting off fireworks, the public parks are Jackson Park and Forsberg Park.
Perfect.
At the lake. Councilman Vilhauer?
I've got a follow-up question what Michael just asked. We've got any number of public access points. I don't know how many we've got around the lake. Can fireworks be shot off from those spots? I think it's a Sailboat Landing, for example.
Yeah, I would assume they can. Matt, you want to comment on that?
I don't know of any reason why they could not be shot there that comes to mind.
Okay.
I do believe if there's state accesses, they cannot. Obviously, Matt, I will lean to you. We might need to research that, but I do believe if it's a state access such as Sailboat, the city access is, Jackson City, or not city with this, but I do believe, just because I was located by Sailboat, and I do believe the state did mention that was off limits.
If Sailboat might be, if Sailboat is controlled by the state, I don't know if Glenn was referencing those other little, there's numerous little points around the lake where roads lead into the lake that are technically public access. It's controlled by the city, and so I don't think that there'd be any reason why folks couldn't shoot fireworks there. Of course, there'd probably only be room for one or two folks at each of those places. But
then that begs the comment. I'm thinking of down by Cuts Avenue, just down the road from you, Mayor. That's a public access point, and I received a complaint from a citizen about the stuff that's stored at some of those access points. That is not a storage spot for boat docks and lifts and old vehicles and whatnot. So especially with the 4th coming up and those spots probably wanting to be more accessible, people need to get their stuff out of those areas because that's not a storage spot.
Good point. Thank you. Councilman Hoyer?
Now, just a follow-up to that. With all these little public access points right now, do we currently have signage indicating to the public where those points are? Or when was the last time we kind of checked up on that? Because the last thing I'd want to see on the 4th is somebody cuts in there from the public and it's not a public spot, and they get into a situation with the property owner. So if we could possibly make it very clear for folks where those are before we hit the 4th, that might be a proactive thing to do.
Sure. I think there'd be quite a few neighbors that would be unhappy about the city publicizing those public access. Many of them are not improved. They're just lawn that's mowed by the adjacent property owners, and it's there for the public. But quite a few of them are not improved. So it would feel intrusive. Not that it would be illegal.
Right. I guess that kind of begs an interesting discussion, though. If we're feeling weird about public land being utilized by the public, I mean, is there a discussion there that we should be having?
Well, no, this has been brought up before that we should put signage there, and I think we're working on that. I doubt if those points are all signed at this time. And so, I mean, we can publicize a map, but and we have a map, I can show it, but it's hard to see unless you zoom in, and it's, you can't tell by looking at it if it's improved or not. So I think we could do that, but I think it's going to be misleading to people. And we would
follow up on.
Go ahead. Yeah, I'd like
I was going to say, to follow up on Councilman Hoyer's comment there, I'm not sure if this is what you're getting at, but I mean, I suppose that that's a fair, that Glenn raises a fair point here. I mean, maybe it's a discussion that needs to be had, is if we don't think that the public can shoot fireworks at our large park, should we be condoning the public shooting fireworks at these little tiny access points?
Right now, it's not prohibited. So you're absolutely right that it would be correct for someone to be able to use that for that purpose. And I can put a map out, but it's going to be difficult to interpret, and you will probably have people going to the wrong spot thinking it's a public access. I don't know.
Well, and maybe that's some of the confusion for some folks too, with storing items on these plots of land. If they don't even realize that they're public land, they might think it's just like somebody might have just said, "Hey, yeah, go ahead, nothing's over there." So
right, I'm not aware of that going on very often. The city has had numerous exercises of going around the lake and notifying people to remove their things from the rights of way like that. And I mean, massive efforts. Years ago, it was a huge problem, but lately I haven't seen that around the ones that are near me. I haven't seen that at all, but it's possible that it's going on some of them.
okay, then yeah, I mean, the least we could do is get a map out of those locations, even if it's not for the 4th, just as an advocate for the public. If it's public land, the public owns it, so the public has a right to it and to know where that's
Absolutely. We have such a map, and we can just put it on our website.
Perfect.
And people can utilize it that way. Yes, Councilman Holeen?
Thank you, Mayor. Question for TK. TK.
Yeah, go ahead.
I understand this was a safety concern from the board. Was there any other strategic alternative considered other than an outright ban at City Park, such as maybe some enforcement or some safety guidelines, or where you could set them off and where you couldn't? Or was I will admit I haven't been to City Park for the 4th in 20 some years, so I don't know how bad it got. From a distance, it looks beautiful, but was there an alternative other than an outright ban at City Park that was considered feasible?
There was, Councilman. This was not a one meeting and done topic. This went through facility committee, I'm going to say 3 to 4 times before it went to the board. Multiple options were discussed. They discussed, should we just change the time and put a parameter on 8 p.m. to midnight? That way the swimmers were gone, that kind of thing. We talked about moving across the road to the east along Highway 20, but that area is so damp typically all the time. When it came down to it, it basically made the most sense to do an all or none, and that's what the board came up with. After adhering or looking at all the safety issues, it has, you mentioned the 20-year thing, and it is beautiful. I mean, it is nice to sit and watch. But if you're shoulder to shoulder out there, if you're camping, it's not a safe environment. And one of the big things is we spend almost 5 days picking up other people's trash. The pollution issue has been brought up. That wasn't a big key of our board's decision, but the safety aspect is by far the 90% of the basis to completely ban it as a whole. We mentioned these smaller little access points. You know, if you're a neighbor to that access, absolutely it's a safety issue. But we're trying to pack in hundreds of people, including campers, families, people trying to do a picnic, and the fireworks in that environment just simply did not mix, and that's why we did go forward with the full ban.
Councilman Holeen?
Thank you, Mayor. TK, I know this isn't the Park and Rec Board's responsibility, but was there any discussion, or did anyone come to testify regarding the tax implications for this? It seems to me that a lot of those people staying at City Park are probably coming from out of town. They're spending, from what I hear, thousands and thousands of dollars on fireworks, along with food, beverages, staying there. And it seems to me that we might be driving some of these people away, or at least where they wouldn't be spending money there. And I know that's not your responsibility, but did anyone come to testify regarding that concern? And was that addressed along the way?
We did not have an official delegation that came forth. It was discussed at our committee level and board level of the potential implication of the lack of fireworks there or whatever that may be. But nobody did come forth, and truthfully, City Park around the holidays is not typical. You won't see a large contingency of out-of-town people just because we don't offer reservations. And to get a spot at City Park, typically you're pulling in almost 10 days prior to that event. You know, if we had a reservation system, that probably would look differently, but it primarily is a local campground for those holidays. So we may not be losing on the financial aspect on that side. But as far as the fireworks, you know, I can't say it's something we don't do. It was discussed internally, but no one officially came forward and questioned the board on that decision.
All right. I see Councilman Albertson has his hand up.
I have a question. Thanks, Mayor. I have a question for Terry also. Forestburg Park. What are the parameters of that park to be having fireworks? It looks like it's really a dangerous area over there to me to have fireworks, and so where can you shoot fireworks? What's the status in Forestburg Park? Because that's nothing but grass and, you know, different things that can shoot, that can set on fire. So I'm really concerned about it if we would allow a big group of people to move across the road and shoot there.
Okay, as far as Forestburg, that's always been on the books as an acceptable location to shoot. You know, how much it's been used in the past, I'm not sure. I did speak with a resident that lives very close to that location, and they had the concern. And what I mentioned that we would follow any type of county burn bans. As far as the park itself, you know, it is one large gravel parking lot. If people are not completely familiar, that's where the sundial clock is. I'm going to call it real close to across the street from North Shore, you know, a little bit farther west. But that's the location of that park. It does have a substantial gravel parking lot, but I won't argue with you, Dan, as far as, you know, the wetlands, it's full of cattails, that type of thing. I don't think it's been strongly utilized because, you know, City Park was always an option, and we may see an increase in usage moving forward, but I can't give you specifics on how much it's been used in the past, what we'll see this year, and it may be one of those things we look at July 4th, and if things become an issue, we come back before the council for further action.
Well, especially if it happens to be a dry year, which it might be, even though we don't think it's dry right now, but those cattails and that whole thing, and people could get trapped in there pretty easily with fire trucks or, you know, it doesn't look like a very safe place to me to have fireworks.
And I'll refer to our attorney, Matt Roby, on the fact that I think if we do have a very dry year, if there's burn bans in place or if we feel it's dry, Matt, I would assume we could do some type of council action to amend this ordinance, kind of, I won't call it last minute, but looking into the future, thinking this may be a problem. Do you want to chime in on that, Matt?
Yeah, I'd have to look to see the exact mechanism we would use there, but if there was a burn ban in place, that would certainly be something we'd have to look at.
Okay.
Right. Councilman Lallam's hand is also up. Did you want to weigh in, Councilman Lallam?
Yes, just a suggestion. I actually had Dan Rottershot from Lewis call me, wondering about, they knew this was going to be on the agenda. One of the things they asked, and just putting it out there for discussion, is, the event, the fireworks event that was done on a couple weeks ago by them for their display, was done out at the Anza Soccer Complex. He wondered about maybe they could do something like a public fireworks shooting off for anyone that wants to come out and shoot fireworks. And he actually offered members of his staff and the Christian school to go out and clean out the day after, maybe with a little bit of assistance, by the general public about going out and actually cleaning up after whoever the bad apples don't tend to pick up their stuff or can't find them. So just a thought.
Right, and Liaison Bueller, who is our council liaison, did mention Anza as, and I think, I can't remember who asked it, if it was Councilman Rademski or Holeen did ask if we looked at alternatives, and Mount Hope, Anza was considered as an alternative. And Bruce, if you want to touch on that as well, but that was considered, and there's definitely options. Right now we're looking at the unsafeness of City Park, and I'm hearing there's a lot of different opportunities. But Bruce, I know you discussed Anza within the board meetings a couple times. So,
yeah, I just want to mention a little bit. I'd like to discuss a little bit about our conversations regarding the safety issue. When we've got the police department that's come to us and said that it's a dangerous situation for them, their officers. By the time somebody shot up, and this happens frequently, I guess, they shoot fireworks at the policeman. And by the time it's over, they can't identify where that came from. So that was a definite issue with the police department. But as to the point of a different location, I think we really should take a look at that Anza field. I think that, to me, that would be a good opportunity for us to be able to allow the public to still do that. And just one other thing, too, on the safety end of this thing, the other part are the campers, the folks in the campers, the kids. There were issues about people swimming, being in the water, fireworks, fire rockets, whatever, shooting out into the water. All those things had to be considered when we made the decision, because I think we all would love to see that continue there. But I do think that the city has maybe some alternate locations that might work for that. And I think Anza would be a real good one for us to take a close look at.
And we can do that. And I think, looking at the actual agenda item is looking at the ban of City Park, and us as a staff and the board would be happy to come back to the council with some alternatives. I don't know, I think tonight the focus is on City Park, but I have no problem working with our board to come through with some alternatives for the community beyond what we already have.
Right. Thank you, Terry. Councilman Vilhar?
TK, you've got a Park and Rec Board meeting next Tuesday night, don't you? I guess I'd like to suggest you put that on the agenda for discussion, because I like the idea too of an alternative site someplace. I'm totally in favor of banning it at City Park. I understand your concerns, Reed, but I've got to respect the process that your board and your staff went through, and especially when you start hearing the police department weigh in from their concerns. But I would like to see us consider alternative site for future consideration.
All right, thank you. Councilman Hoyer?
If we do get that tossed onto the agenda for Anza, I think that's actually a great idea, because I do think we kind of owe the public an alternative location that doesn't present the same problems we'd have anyway at the lake. And Anza is such a big, wide open space. I mean, it really could work positively, and it's a good utilization of the space. If we go down that path, we may consider, putting in some simple amenities out there, if we're going to do that, such as like grilling space or whatever, just those simple public ones, stuff like that, just to make it a little more accessible if we're serious about this. But really looking at that whole picture, because it could be a really positive use of it for the summer because, soccer's during soccer season. So,
Yep, thank you. Councilman Albertson, your hand is up. Did you want to speak again?
No, I must not have known I had to click it off.
Oh, okay. You got to click it off. Anyone else?
Mayor, if I might,
Yes, go ahead, Councilman Bueller.
the other thing that I'm a little concerned about, and I think the opportunity to use a different location like Anza perhaps is going to take a little pressure off of those locations that we are going to allow it. Because of the amount of space that's left once we take City Park out of the equation, I think you're going to have people all over each other in those smaller areas that are going to try to shoot fire. I can tell you that a little bit from experience myself at Jackson Park.
Have you been to Forsberg Park, Bruce, or just Jackson?
I have not, Mayor.
Okay.
Jackson Park.
Okay, I remember you describing your experience there. Anyone else want to weigh in?
Madam Mayor, Heath here.
Go ahead, Heath.
If I could, I'll quick pull this map up that you were referring to, and then while I'm talking here, like the mayor pointed out, this map doesn't, without zooming in on it, doesn't clearly show you where those public areas are. But I just wanted to point out there are 20 of them, at least back when this map was created, there were 20 public access locations around the lake. This is an awkward orientation of the lake. So north is up here in this direction. City Park is here. Sandy Shores is over here. One of the things I was going to point out real quick, just to Councilman Hoyer's and some of the other councilmen's discussion here, the Lake Kempesca Master Plan, I believe, generally touches on some of these access points as points of potential improvement for public improvements. And I know that's something Roger Foote is working on as the Upper Big Sioux River Watershed Project Manager underneath Public Works. And he's been communicating recently with me about next year's budget and projects to potentially plug into that. Just for conversation purposes, I wanted to make that known that the Kempesca Master Plan generally talks about these points of access, and I think there's some guidance we can take from that plan to potentially improve some of them, which lends to the discussion of, whether we start signing all or some of them. But something we've got on our radar anyway. I just wanted the council to know that.
All right, thank you.
Mayor?
Councilman Hoyer.
Heath, if we're going to put that, I know it's probably accessible to the public, but you could probably use that same product, and then if we go ahead and just pull some GPS coordinates, they can plug that into any phone, and then you can just, right there. That could be an easy supplement to it, so they don't have to zoom in or think too hard about it. But I would imagine with some of our city software, we can pull some GPS grids pretty easy.
True. Thank you.
Yeah, we would like to digitize this map. It is an older map that was hand-drawn, hand-labeled, and it could be digitized and made it a little bit more user-friendly to, on our GIS layer or something of that nature, or add the coordinates like you're talking about, Councilman Hoyer.
Yeah, each of those access points is shown on the GIS. You have to look at it, though, to see if it's improved. Some of them are, some of them aren't. Anyone else? Don't see anyone, so I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Roll call vote, Kristen?
Okay. Albertson?
Aye.
Bueller?
Aye.
Hoyer?
Aye.
Pauline?
Aye.
Lallam?
Aye.
Manty?
Aye.
Rademski?
Aye.
Roby?
Aye.
Billhauer?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. So we're moving on to item D, which is the first reading of ordinance number 20-18, amending the zoning map of the city of Watertown, South Dakota for a portion of Lot 1, Block 1 of Isabella First Edition from I-1 Light Industrial District to C3 Highway Commercial District. And this is just a first reading, so no action is required. Heath, will you please tell us about that?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. So Steve Horning is the owner of this property. It's currently platted as Lot 1, Block 1 of Isabella First Edition. He's petitioned to rezone the north 167 feet of the lot from I-1 Light Industrial to C3 Highway Commercial District. If it is rezoned, that portion of the platted lot will be required to be subdivided, replatted, to distinguish the new zoning boundaries on a distinguished lot line basis. And so this being first reading before the council tonight, we could certainly help answer questions you might have. The Planning Commission did unanimously recommend approval at their May 7th Planning Commission meeting.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Councilman Vilhauer?
Just a comment, Heath, if I'm correct, that if this is changed, that would then match up with the zoning designation on the properties immediately either side of that parcel, correct?
Correct, Councilman Vilhauer, and perfect segue into my map I was going to share here. So this is the map of the rezoned area. We have Highway 212 running through here. You have the college property that's C3, and I guess I'm not familiar with the exact business that's right here, but there's also C3 to the west, and this hashed area is what would become C3. It's currently I-1.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments, council? All right, not seeing any, so we'll move on. Thank you. The next item is now, we'll go back to B, the second reading of ordinance number 20-17, removing city employee residency regulations from the ordinance. And I would like the Human Resources Director, Jelaine Pifley, to tell us about that one.
Thank you, Mayor. So basically, this is the second reading, and it's the section of 4.01C of the City of Watertown Personnel Policy and Procedure Manual will be deleted, and it'll be replaced with the following employees that will require the residence of 15 miles from the Watertown Regional Airport. Those employees will include all airport staff, fire rescue staff, IT staff, police department staff, street division operators and foremen, and then the wastewater collection staff. Do you guys have any questions?
All right, before we start in on the questions, I'd like to take a motion for approval.
Moved.
Got a motion by Vilhauer. Is there a second?
Bueller.
Thank you, Councilman Bueller. So we have a motion by Vilhauer, second by Bueller. Now, anyone have any questions or comments? Councilman Hoyer?
I don't know which member would answer this necessarily, but is the restriction for IT just in case the server rack goes down or something, or was there a reason that IT wouldn't be capable of having that distance?
Jelaine, can you answer that?
Yeah, so I believe that that's one of the main reasons is due to the fact that they are pretty important in regards to if the fire department were to shut down, if the police department, if any of their servers were to shut down, they're going to need to potentially go into the fire department and or the police department to get the servers back up and running. And Matt did do some more research, so if I misspoke, Matt, I would ask that you comment.
No, I would actually defer to Spencer.
Yeah, I see Spencer's on. So Spencer, would you add to that? The IT director?
Yeah, you guys got it right. The biggest thing is we need to be close proximity to the 911 center just in case that goes down. It's a really important part of our job is to keep them up and running. So that's the main reason.
All right. Councilman Rademski?
What's driving the motion for this ordinance to be repealed?
The main reason is to enlarge the pool of applicants for the city when we have job openings. And this has been requested numerous times through the years. It gets brought up, and there's good arguments on both sides of it. But I just think with our dwindling applicant pool and the fact that baby boomers are retiring and leaving the workforce faster than people are stepping up to take public servant roles. This is a move to enable us to get the best qualified candidates for as many of our jobs as we can, and takes away us telling them where they have to live, which is often a deterrent for someone to take a job. So that's what's motivating this. Councilman Hoyer?
So we heard who is not doing it. Do we have a list of who this does affect? Like which departments?
Jelaine, can you reverse engineer that? So, and say who this does apply to instead of who it doesn't?
Sure. So who essentially it doesn't apply to would be a lot of folks in City Hall, and some management staff is probably going to be your big ones.
Councilman Rademski?
So what this amounts to basically is we're asking our tax-paying citizens to use their tax money to fund the salaries of people who not only will not live in the city, but will live outside of Cottington County. But then we turn around and ask them to shop local and support local businesses. I don't think it's in the city's best interest to promote people to live outside the city and draw tax-paying citizens' wages to fund their salaries. If the city's good enough to work in, I think the city's good enough to live in.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that input, but to be honest, for many, many years, we haven't required people to live in the city limits. So quite a few of our employees already live outside the city limits in the county and further away. This just expands it a little further, and the people who come to work here generally do shop here. They shop while they're here. They pick up groceries, buy gas, stop at the stores. So I would say that's not true, that they're not spending money here just because it's not where their house is. Where their house is, you know, it's where their body is for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, year round, and they'll tend to spend money in that location. So I don't know that anybody's done a study on that to see what it is, but yes, Councilman Hoyer.
Oh, dang it. Now I lost my train of thought on it. I was going to ask, so does this, once we repeal this, if we do that, does it put the onus just on the departments to do it just purely off of their own policies? Just by policy, this one will function
No,
this
we'll
way?
be having a policy manual. So, I mean, if they wanted to change the policy, then they would have to give the supporting reasons, and the council would have to approve that. But it does go in, and the next thing on the agenda is going to be modification of our policy manual.
Sure. Yeah, I was just seeing if this lets basically departments self-govern a little bit more, if that's how they're
Well,
feeling.
it kind of does.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true. And the departments are different. I mean,
For sure.
it's you look at what has happened with COVID. City Hall is closed to the public except by appointment, and virtually every department has a lot of people working remotely, and every single thing that we do in City Hall is still happening. We haven't stopped any of our services. We can conduct our services remotely now with technology, and so if someone's home in a blizzard, they can probably still work if we want to let them. I mean, right now, we lifted the prohibition from working from home during the COVID crisis, but there could be situations where, you know, we could do that so it's seamless. There's no interruption of service whatsoever. So the public gets the same good quality service regardless of where the employee is. Councilman Holeen?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess this question is for Jelaine, but I'll let anyone answer it. And I want to preface it. I'm not mad. I understand what you're trying to do is just find employees, and I applaud that. But the mayor just touched upon something. This COVID crisis has brought to light people working remotely. But if this passes, what's to stop it from constantly being eroded to where we just relax our rules so much that we allow full-time city employees to work remotely nonstop? Why 35 miles? When will it be stretched out to 60 miles or 90 miles? I guess I don't know we constantly relax it, and where is it going to stop? Have we had that discussion?
Well, we're not limiting it. That's the proposal is to not limit it at all. So if someone wants to commute from Sioux Falls, that's their decision. And if they're late to work, that's a different kind of action that is required. And we can deal with that on a disciplinary basis.
I would also say that I guess you're going with the slippery slope argument. I understand that, but that would be a separate conversation that the council would have to have. Because currently, by our personnel policy, except under this circumstance we're in right now, work done not at the workplace does not count as work. So maybe at some point it might be a discussion for the council to have about work from home and that sort of thing. But currently, if somebody lives in Minneapolis and they wanted to commute here every day, they'd still have to get here by 8 and work a full day. They couldn't work from Minneapolis.
Right, that hasn't changed. We're not proposing to change that. We just happen to be in a situation with COVID right now where a lot of people are working remotely, but that's not what we're proposing, changing. Councilman Vilhauer?
Just a couple comments. This is for sure, since I'm on the council, the second time, if not more, that we have discussed this. Same arguments were raised. I hear your concerns, Jason, Reed, your concerns. But in this day and age, I do not see what difference or how critical the distance element should be as long as that employee is getting their job done satisfactorily. And secondly, I've also been in this position long enough to know that we have had an awfully hard time at times filling a position, and if we can make this one minor change that could help a future position, I'm in favor of removing that distance requirement.
Thank you. I see Councilman Roby's hand is up. Councilman Roby?
Thank you. As Glenn alluded to, we've seen this before, and it's kind of been a moving target, which makes me question the policy when we're kind of changing it on a fairly regular basis. I'm okay with this change. I'm going to vote for it because it's clear, but I'm going to also follow up to say when a city manager comes on board, I'd like to have it revisited. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Lallam?
Mayor, does this need to be open to the public comment? Because we never did that.
No, it does not. Thank you.
Okay.
Title 21 requires a public hearing, but not this title.
Okay. I understand the points. I got a couple of comments that people have sent me. I'd love to have everyone, that works here live in town, but, to your point, we have people that live in Florence, they live in Castlewood, they can live in, an acreage that's 15 miles away. The chances of someone not spending money in Watertown when you are here every day is pretty low. But at the same time, it's hard to find good employees, and if an employee, a quality employee can be hired and they, live a little bit farther away, I would rather we hire a quality employee.
Thank you. Councilwoman Manti?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to add that, Brookings made this change quite some time ago to their policy, and in my discussions with their HR manager, the first time we talked about this, which was a couple years ago, they said that it was a game changer for them. They have no requirement. He gave examples of people who live in Sioux Falls because one spouse or another has a job at the hospital or something like that. And in fact, they even go so far as to have special allowances for, storms and things like that. But what he said was, and that was echoed out here too, is that the person still had to comply with all the rest of the components of their job, being on time, completing their work, that type of thing. So just having talked to the HR person in Brookings a while ago, they were adamant that this was something that they changed that was great, and they're not planning on changing it back anytime soon. So I think all the rest of the things I wanted to say were already said about quality employees and that type of thing. But we're not alone in this. I guess, in fact, right now, we are probably one of the few of the cities our size in South Dakota that does have a really very restrictive. Most of them have dropped it altogether.
All right, thank you. I see Kristen Bobsey's hand is up. Kristen, do you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just kind of coming from my last role too, I did want to say that in my time with the city, this policy has actually been looked at and changed 3 times. It's just slowly been moved out further and further. Some of it, I know a lot of times it's viewed as it's being changed because of hiring difficulties. I do want to point out that, yes, sometimes it has something to do with the hiring of employees, but we have also lost very good employees because of this. There again, you'll have a spouse that needs to move, and the employee will end up having to quit because they can't meet that residency requirement. So I understand sometimes the money aspect of the sales tax, but we also tend to lose employees with a lot of knowledge and a lot of time with the city because of a residency issue. The other thing I do want to point out is that Delane and Matt both requested all department heads to look at it and to give their input. So every department has had the opportunity to look at their size of their department, the needs, how fast they need to respond, and we all had that opportunity to implement what we felt was appropriate for our department. So thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Adam and Beth, you still have your hands up. Did you want to speak again? No? Okay. Anyone else? Councilman Holeen.
Thank you, Mayor. I am going to vote against this, but just by a little bit. The question has been raised, if someone lives and earns a salary here from the taxpayers, should their money be reinvested back into the community? You can argue how much of that salary will be reinvested. I think most taxpayers would want their city employees to live inside the city limits, and I understand relaxing them a little bit. Along the same argument, I'm going to get philosophical here for a moment, and that is, there's an old saying that says government is best which is closest to the people. And part of that means that if you are neighbors with someone, you know who they are invested in your neighborhood, in your town, they know the people involved, and there's repercussions to their political and I would even say personal life based upon how they vote. They are invested in the community. And if we start relaxing these rules down this slippery slope where someone who doesn't even live in Watertown, let's say, considers themselves a resident of another town, they would not be what I would call that closest level of government. They would not be the most responsive to the people that they are trying to serve. And I am a little reluctant on a philosophical grounds for that reason. The tax money, I think, is along the same line. So for those 2 reasons, just slightly, I'm going to vote against this, but thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'm not seeing anyone else, so I will go ahead and take a roll call vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Kristen?
Okay. Albertson.
Aye.
Bueller.
Aye.
Hoyer.
Aye.
Holeen.
No.
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to give my... Lallam.
Aye.
Santee. Aye. Rademski.
No.
Roby.
Aye.
Billhauer.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, and this next item is related. Item E is approval of Resolution 20-25, amending the Personnel Policy and Procedure Manual to remove the 35-mile residency requirement and clarify the categories of employees subject to the 15-mile residency requirement. And I'll look for a motion, then we'll have some discussion.
So moved.
Motion by Vilhauer,
Second.
second by Hoyer. And Jelaine, would you like to say anything more about this?
I believe I explained it in the prior discussion. If you want me to read off the employees who are affected by that 15-mile radius, I would be happy to do so.
Why don't you go ahead and do that?
Okay. So the following categories of employees who will be required to reside within that 15 miles of the Watertown Regional Airport do include airport staff, fire staff, IT staff, police staff, street division operators and foremen, and wastewater division plant operators and collections staff. And again, just to reiterate what Kristen said, Matt did reach out to all the department heads, and we got all of their input for this matter.
Right, thank you. All right, any further discussion here?
Mayor?
Hang on a sec, Councilman Hoyer?
I would just toss out, if we're going to go ahead and do this, just please make sure we do have accountability for people showing up to work on time, being where they're supposed to be. I know that there's some mechanisms in place. I know each department kind of handles it a little bit different, but if your voice isn't being heard, please make it heard if there's issues that come up from this.
Right, thank you. Was that you, Heath?
Yes, it was. Could I speak for a minute?
Sure, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'll just quick share my screen too, in regards to the, if it lets me here, to talk real briefly on the Public Works Division. For one reason I want to bring this up as a point of clarity, I think Matt and I and Jelaine had a couple different renditions of this going around. The Solid Waste Division should be wastewater collection. So we do not intend to limit this to the Solid Waste Division. Reason being, in talking with Superintendent Berger, the Solid Waste Division is not on call or on standby as the wastewater division and wastewater collection operators are on standby. There was just a point of clarity there that we would want to exclude the Solid Waste Division and include the wastewater collections. And then the other Public Works divisions, the airport staff and the street division, all of those, the reason those were selected on this, you put on this list for context, primarily stems back to what I said a minute ago. If there's any staff that are on call or responsible to take an on-call phone home with them each night on a rotational basis and they're on standby, those are the positions and the divisions that we wanted to make sure were held to this 15-mile restriction. So that's where those came into play and why they were selected for Public Works. So I just wanted to explain that logic to the council.
Thank you. It's a lot of first responders from Public Works and Public Safety that are on that list. Anyone
Mayor?
else? Yes, who is that?
This is Matt.
Okay, go ahead, Matt.
So I don't know, I just noticed Heath pointed out there that correction. The version that you have in front of you was not the version that was on the last agenda. There must have been a mix-up in our software system. So the amended, the version that should be approved is the version that was on the council meeting from the last council meeting, the agenda from the last council meeting. So it does include that correction that Heath just pointed out.
So the advertised one did have the correct one, the correct list. Is that what you said? The published agenda, or no?
Yes, the agenda from the last council meeting with the resolution that was on the attached to the agenda from the last council meeting is the resolution that should be considered here. It includes the correction that Heath just made verbally.
Okay. And I'm not sure I didn't make a note of who made, okay, it was Vilhauer and Hoyer.
I'll change my motion to reflect what Matt just said.
And Councilman Hoyer? Okay, so we have a modification to put the correct department's listing. Any other, okay, Heath and Matt. Okay. Anyone else want to speak before we take a vote? All right, all those in favor, did someone want to speak? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Kristen?
Okay. Albertson.
Aye.
Bueller.
Aye.
Hoyer.
Aye.
Pauline.
No.
Okay. Lallam.
Aye.
Manti. Aye. Rademski.
No.
Roby.
Aye.
Vilhauer.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is F, approval of resolution number 20-26, contingency transfer, general fund. And look for a motion second on that. Motion by Holleen,
Second.
second by Vilhauer, and I will ask Kristen to tell us about this, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a contingency transfer. Every year during the budget process, part of our budget is we implement $300,000 that's set aside as a contingency. What this is meant for is those unanticipated expenditures that aren't covered by something that insurance would normally cover or pick up that is probably going to be not able to be fit within that department's budget. So the police department had one of the engines in the patrol vehicles go out, and it's estimated to be around $7,000 to replace. The car just came off of warranty, so the police department is going to go ahead and get that replaced, and with that, they will be keeping this car in the 3-year cycle after the replacement. I do know that Kirk is on as well, so if anybody has any more specific questions, he can probably answer them to the vehicle. So essentially what this does is it takes the $7,000 from the contingency and moves it to the police department's budget so that they would not go over budget for 2020. If you have any questions, I can try to answer them. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Councilman Rademski?
Question, how many miles are on that vehicle currently that the motor is shot in?
Captain Ellis?
Yes, Mayor. The vehicle as of right now is a 2016 Dodge Charger and has approximately 96,000 miles.
Have we had any other trouble with any other Chargers with engine problems?
No, not with the V8 ones. This is a V8 Charger. That's why it's a little bit more money. It's a Hemi motor.
Well, when we put these out for bids, do we take a look at what warranty options are available for police cruisers?
We do. When we purchased the Ford Explorers, we purchased an additional warranty with them that takes the warranty up to 5 years or 100,000 miles. Dodge does not currently offer that as an option, so this one is outside of the warranty.
In your estimation, which is the better vehicle, the Dodge or the Ford?
You know, I really don't have an opinion on that other than I can tell you that they're all hard to find right now. They're really hard to purchase.
All right, thank you.
Councilman Lallam?
Thank you, Mayor. Sergeant Ellis, on that one, is that going to be used primarily as a backup vehicle then after this?
No, it'll be, well, kind of. It'll be an SRO vehicle, so one of the school resource officers will drive it to and from the school, so that's why we're saying 3 more years. It is worth to note that Dodge did redo their body styling and equipment, so that is why this vehicle, all the equipment that's inside of it, that would probably be around $4,000 worth of equipment inside of it, cannot be put inside of a new vehicle because of the change in the body, so it makes sense from what we're seeing to put a motor in it and use it for 3 more years because the equipment that's inside has really no value anyways to it because we can't put it in the new vehicle.
Is there a warranty that comes with this after the work is completed?
There is. This motor has a 3-year unlimited mile warranty, so anything that is attached to the motor it would fall under that.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Kristen?
Albertson?
Aye.
Bueller?
Aye.
Boyer?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Lallam?
Aye.
Manti?
Aye.
Rademski?
Aye.
Aye.
Vilhauer?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item is G, approval of resolution number 20-17, adopting the boundaries of tax increment district number 12 within the city of Watertown, South Dakota, and the authorization for the mayor to sign a development agreement between the city of Watertown and Parkside Place LLC for tax increment district number 12. Have a
Hey, look
motion-
there, come here.
Motion by Holeen. I don't know what that was. A second by Hoyer. And I will ask Matt to start this. We have several staff members that can talk about this, and some are in the audience here, but we'll start with Matt.
Thanks, Mary. You took the words out of my mouth. This is a pretty joint effort here. Largely, this is a project that's prepared, or the documentation is prepared by the Watertown Development Company, the large TIF plan that you have in front of you. The contract I helped put together, Brandy kind of ushered it through the Plan Commission. And but essentially what this is the proposal for the approval of a tax increment finance district, which will be known as TIF number 12 in the city of Watertown. It'll actually be our 11th TIF. A designation of TIF number 11 is a TIF that's been approved by the Plan Commission, but has not been brought forward to the council yet. The total amount of tax increment that the city will be paying out will be $1,466,470. Now that's paid out over 20 years, or until we hit that number, whichever comes first. So if it gets assessed at a higher value, the TIF would end sooner. If it gets assessed at a lower value than we anticipate, the 20 years would expire and the payments no longer be made. Another thing to note is that the payments here are being assigned. They're payments owed to the developer, but part of the agreement that's part of this resolution here is that the payments that the city will make will be paid to the Watertown Development Company because there's financing that they're facilitating for the project. So I'll just stop there, and then I would let probably Chris and Jesse, if they're in the room, maybe chime in and go from there.
Okay, we have Watertown Development Director Chris Shilkin and the developer Jesse Craig in the room, so go ahead, you guys. And
Thanks, Mayor. We also have Tracy, who put together the TIF document. She's on the phone, so if there's any questions related there, Tracy, feel free to jump in anytime. I can maybe turn over quick to Jesse Craig to give a brief overview of the project proposing and different things involved.
This might be my deal.
Yeah, 36-plex apartment complex, all one bedrooms, 36 parking stalls, main floor heated parking garage.
Oh, not either.
someone needs to mute,
Oh, sorry.
not you.
I don't have, I'll mute.
No,
I
no.
have no problem at all with that.
Continue, please.
8 2nd Street North, right across the road here, adjacent to the new downtown City Park. Hopefully start construction mid-June, 12-month construction period. So finalize it, end of June next year. So.
All right, thank you.
Mayor, I would add one more item just to point out prior to discussion here. This agreement, the agreement part of this action, does include an agreement by the city to reimburse the developer for costs related to site utility improvements, sidewalk removal and replacement, and alley removal. And specifically, it's up to, not to exceed, $18,500 for site utility improvements, $22,000 for sidewalk removal and replacement, and $23,500 for alley removal. If you want to note that section is section 2.10 of the contract.
All right, thank you for pointing that out. Now, I would entertain some questions and comments. Councilman Hoyer.
With the sidewalk being replaced, will it be the same dimensions it currently is?
It will. Probably the only thing that we would change possibly would be kind of like we did with the Lofts project, where we looked at implementing planters. And again, that would go through Heath and engineering and city commission, of course, if that were worth pursuing. We'd have to look at the dimensions on that. I don't know if this sidewalk over here is quite as wide as the one on Broadway, so it might not work for that. But also in talking with Heath and with other staff members in regards to what type of look we want to have in regards to that too, whether it's going to be the same as what's there now, or if we're going to do some different type of colored concrete and stamping, that would be open for possibilities also.
All right, thank you. Councilman Helene?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Craig, why did you decide on one bedroom?
One bedrooms always rent. Twos not always, threes not always, especially when you're looking at downtown mixed use, higher density, higher young professionals, things of that nature. And it also comes back to my management background. With two bedrooms, you always have inner fighting between tenant or between roommates and things like that. One bedrooms just go super simple, super clean. This one's a little tighter site, so we were also looking at the ratio of parking spaces to bedrooms, and it just worked out a lot better on this site to have all one bedrooms.
Good question. Anyone else? Councilman Vilhauer?
Yeah, I've got a number of questions. First of all, I think you've already answered one of them, Matt, and you alluded to it, Michael. As far as we've got a firm commitment relative to the city on utility sidewalks, alley improvements, so we know what our costs will be on that. So that's part of this agreement. So I just want to make sure I understand that and that we're clear on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And we're basing that a lot on what just happened with the Lofts, the same kind of bids, and
sure.
We know what the per square foot's going to cost for concrete and things like that.
Sounds good. Chris, I guess I'll ask you. I mean, your board's fully on board with this?
Yeah. So we maybe one thing to note too: the project decreased in cost from the first go round by a little bit. So yeah, we have approved us to go facilitate financing to fund the TIF. That's been approved at a higher dollar amount. If anything changes now, we just have to bring it back since it'll be a lower amount just to make sure we're on the same page. But as the project lowered, so did the TIF amount, but so did the TIF amount collected, so it's all in range there.
Okay. And then from the city standpoint, we've got a 20-year payback up to the dollar amount. I mean, we're not funding anything up front, or we're not on the hook for anything else besides that commitment throughout that 20-year period, correct?
Well, yes, the property taxes are just flowing through, but I suppose maybe a clear way just so everybody's on, the city's not out any money on the TIF per se.
Oh, right.
Yep.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
We have the alley and the
And
utilities.
besides that,
correct, yep.
And just a question in general regarding the TIF, we're well within our allowable limits for TIFs for our community?
Yeah, I don't know what page it is, but Tracy does a good job of referencing our total taxable allowable TIFs versus what we actually have, and I think I don't even know if we're quite a third of the way there. Sure. I think we're still under a third of the way there. So, okay. And I'll always reiterate too, TIF's been a tool for economic development for a long time. New to Watertown for sure, as we've been getting projects going in facilitating downtown redevelopment, but pretty common tool used throughout the United States. I know we've had brief history. It seems like we've had more lately in the last 2 years, but those are really what it takes to get development going. So,
just a couple more, a few more yet. As I understand it, the school district, because I've heard that as an objection in the past from the school district, but they are made whole, or they're kept whole throughout that process by part of the school aid formula. Is that correct?
Yeah. So Tracy had pre-flighted this one with the state of South Dakota and got an economic development designation, which does hold county and schools harmless.
Okay. And then I'm never quite sure what happens if the project, goes bankrupt, goes belly up, or is destroyed, fire, storm, whatever, or changes hands. This still applies going forward, even if something like that were to happen?
Well, since it's all property tax, some way, shape, or form, somebody would own the property. We discuss that at our board level too. We have some different agreements that we have with developers on that. that protect us. But more than likely, when it's up, whether it's sold or something happens, it's going to have some tax assessed value while it's in use. So, as a reminder too, you know, these really pay off year 21 when, you know, you take a $300,000 property, turn it into a $5 million property. Of course, the property tax is really when you make it up, or, you know, year 20 and beyond as commercial taxes start hitting the books at that point. So definitely a long game, but definitely with the initial investment in what we're doing.
And then my last question, I'll direct to our finance officer, Kristen. Any red flags from your perspective as you look at this?
Thank you, Glenn. No, I think the biggest thing is just that when we put in the max amounts for our out-of-pocket regarding the alley and stuff like that, that helps as far as the budget. But otherwise, nope. Otherwise, straightforward.
Okay, thanks. And I'll yield the floor.
Councilman Hoyer?
I just know and the public would be probably interested in this, but with the lofts, there's commercial space below them. I would understand parking is going to be there. Is there going to be any other commercial space or anything like that that'll be included with this structure?
Yeah, there'll be commercial space, about 3,000 square feet on the front and about 1,200 square feet on the back on the park side.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Great.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilman Rademski.
Jesse, I just want to say what you're doing for Watertown is great, and I hope you continue to build and make Watertown prosperous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and this, you know, development downtown and residential combined with commercial mixed use is really important for us. That's very, very helpful for where we want to go with our town developing. It's one of our main goals, so thanks for doing that. I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Roll call vote, please, Kristen.
Albertson?
Aye.
Bueller?
Aye.
Hoyer?
Aye.
Pauline?
Aye.
Lawlem?
Aye.
Manti?
Aye.
Rademski?
Aye.
Roby?
Aye.
Billhauer?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you as well.
Thanks, see ya. All right, item H is review of the continued necessity of resolution number 20-15, declaring an emergency concerning the pandemic outbreak of the novel coronavirus, COVID-19, and providing for responsive measures related to the operations of the city and the protection of public health. And I'm not going to take a motion right away, but I will let City Attorney Matt Roby talk about this. Go ahead, Matt.
Thank you, Mayor. As the council will recall, this was passed by the council a month and a half ago or so, 2 months ago. It's since been amended twice. Once to clarify that that the closure of buildings does not apply to city-owned buildings that happen to be operated by third parties. So it's just city-operated buildings. And then we also made an exception for the zoo and the wellness center. You know, in addition to that, it does just to run through what it does again. It declares a public health emergency in the city of Watertown. It gives the mayor the ability to temporarily suspend applicable clauses of the personnel policy. So specifically, as we referenced earlier, some of the work from home prerogatives here that are being facilitated are tied to this. The buildings policy arrangements for meetings and encouraging folks to follow CDC guidelines, and then giving the mayor some additional abilities if there's an urgent matter that needs to be addressed.
All right, thank you. And now the park board made some recommendations on some of the city buildings to authorize opening them, and the park director interim Terry Kelly is here. If you want to tell us about those things, Terry, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to kind of give you a synopsis of the special meeting we had 1 week ago on May 11th. We did call a special meeting as we were getting to the point where we were ready to progress a little further with our openings. Within the board did take action on a few facilities. Some of these come with recommendations. Some do fall within the Park and Rec board rights to open that weren't involved with the resolution. So we've got kind of a combination here tonight of just giving the council an update on certain facilities and then giving you a recommendation in hopes that you do amend the current resolution in front of you. And I apologize, I truly do have about 10 pieces of paper in front of me so I don't miss anything. The first one, the playgrounds within the community, those were officially opened by the authority of the park board. They were opened the following day on Tuesday with tape coming down. And I'm going to basically up front say everything we are opening or considering opening comes with personal responsibility, comes with social distancing, comes with CDC guidelines. And I say that up front just to not be repetitive. Every time I talk about a facility, I don't feel I want to repeat that we are focused on those aspects. So again, just so the council is aware, we have open playgrounds to the community. Although CDC still recommends the closure, we have determined that we are not going to play police on that. We're going to leave that up to personal responsibility again, in hopes people follow that. Other action, there was a recommendation to the council to amend the resolution to allow us to open a few of our brick and mortar rental facilities, namely Derby Downs Rodeo Arena and the clubhouse, in addition to Foley Shelter, which is located at the new Lions Park on 3rd Avenue. With that, we do have restrictions of what the renter can and can't do, but that did come in with a recommendation to the council to go ahead and let us offer those amenities to the public. We do have some rentals actually beginning as early as this Friday. Majority of those are graduations. We do have a small rodeo that will happen in the arena, but that would fall under the current resolution within the council. Restrooms, outdoor restrooms, we have determined to open the ones that we actually have staff on site. The two mainly would be the outdoor restroom at Cattail Crossing, the restroom that's on the course. We have the ability to sanitize that regularly. In addition, we did open the restroom at the campground at Stokes Thomas Lake City Park. We did not open the showers, but we have opened those. And the rest of the restrooms that are unstaffed, example, McKinley Park, Highland Park, we will remain closed just for the fact that we do not have the staff currently on board to go in there on a regular basis to ensure sanitation. Moving on, athletic complexes, the board met and we did determine to recommend 2 open athletic complexes. This comes with no restrooms. And the opening of the athletic complex is strictly a practice at this point. We are planning on meeting on our regular scheduled meeting next Tuesday on the 26th to go ahead and determine if we want to do structured programs. But we do feel this is a great opportunity to put this in the hands of the associations. They've all came forward to the board with great ideas, not only in a local level, but they've been working with state and national organizations to come up with a plan to make it a safe environment. The board heard those out, and we feel they've got a great plan moving forward. And what we're going to do as the Park and Rec staff is we're going to put that on the associations to not only schedule a practice, but to educate each team on what the do's and don'ts are of a practice, what it should look like. That's different things such as no shared equipment. Everybody should have their own helmet. Do not use the dugouts for more than 4 people at a time. Use the third baseline, first baseline. At the end of every, if this was, but change the softball out, things like that. So everybody came forth with great ideas. They did their research, and the board felt very comfortable to open these up for practice. There was a little bit of confusion on this level because there is a brick and mortar restroom concession building within the complex. So the question arose of where the authority lies to open these up. And we do feel, we can open the ball fields. We do recommend to the council to actually leave the restrooms closed at least until your next regular meeting. And that will be about the time where structured games may begin. And then we understand we do need to come up with something in that situation. So that's kind of where we're at with athletic complexes. Just a quick recap. We do recommend to open those up, running that through associations to ensure the proper scheduling. We don't get too many teams at one point, and they do know the expectations, the ins and outs of what to have happen at a practice. Moving on, and I know there's going to be a lot of questions when we're done, but the aquatic center and the pool. This was brought up, and there are so many guidelines through research of there's a lot more don'ts than do's when it comes to outdoor pools. Not necessarily your older pool, which is simply maybe some lap lanes and a diving board. But when it comes to aquatic centers, they really limit you on their recommendation from no water slides, no spray features. Lazy rivers, you got to understand, you need a inner tube, which has handles on that everybody touches. When you put it away, you open a gate. The smaller pools have gates to get into. The large amount, the concession areas. And at this point, we are not comfortable moving forward with the pool for opening. And by the time the board meets next and the council, we are probably at the point where the financial obligation to open this probably does not outweigh the risk that we have to staff, the users, the community. So at this point, the recommendation is to keep that facility closed. And while we're talking pools, we do feel we can focus on the indoor pool at the wellness center. This pool is still operational. It does not have us any increased costs. We don't have to open it. But we do want to talk about step 2 from the wellness center, which I'm going to lead into, that we do plan on, with council authority, to go ahead and go into our phase 2 opening, which would be the gymnasium, which would allow simply for family cohabitants to bring your own equipment in, shoot baskets as a family, do that thing. We will not allow any type of competitive environment, no pickup games, no structured programs. Simply, if somebody wants to bring their son, daughter, spouse, whatever in and shoot baskets, and you bring your own equipment in, we would allow for that. Same thing with the racquetball courts. If a father, son, mother, daughter, any cohabitants want to play racquetball, we can allow for that. Moving on to the group fitness, we think we can move forward with groups of less than 10, which would include an instructor, to go ahead and have that. We do have the space to provide social distancing. That would be both land and water classes. Moving to the indoor pool, we are ready to move forward with lap swims, to have water exercise classes, because we do have the space for social distancing. With the pool, there still will be no locker rooms. There will be no hot tubs. There will be no saunas. There will be no steam rooms. We do have an expectation that people will come in dressed in their suit and leave in their suit. We are willing to look at a possibility to use the public restroom as a change area, but our preference is to just come in your gear and leave in your gear. The recreation staff spent a lot of time researching this. They're the ones that gave me this recommendation. I've looked through it. I think we can accomplish this. It will come with a few more staff on board, but that's kind of where we're at with the pool. So our recommendation would be to allow us to move on to step 2, which would be to open the gym at the wellness center, the racquetball courts, the pool for nothing more than lap swim and small group water classes, and also group fitness classes that wouldn't exceed 10 people. Other than that, that's kind of the synopsis of what happened, and I am prepared for, I'm sure, a lot of questions, but some are recommendations, some are board action, which mainly involves the playgrounds. So I will turn it over to you, Mayor, or Council, for questions.
Okay, so to be clear, we're considering Resolution 20-15, and the Wellness Center is already open, so there's no action necessary by the council in relation to this resolution in order to move forward with your phased process. Is the board looking for the council to ratify that action?
As a matter of fact, I think especially when it comes to the aquatic side of it, the pool side, definitely, you know, I have spoke to some board members, council members, members of the community in regards to the pool. I know
The indoor pool.
if Councilman Helene wants to jump in, we've had these conversations and we worked hard to determine if it's safe when I came to this meeting to have the council ratify and give us that go ahead to make those decisions. So, and the outdoor pool, we truly feel that there's a lot to adhere to, and we do not have the staff. I don't think the experience would be worth the entrance, and we do have an indoor pool that will probably start with expanded open swims if the CDC does reduce those guidelines.
Okay, so let me just ask a question, probably of Matt. For if the council were to open the buildings at the ball complexes and leave it to the park board's discretion as to, or even staff, as to when they're ready to start maintaining those bathrooms in concession areas, can that be done, or is it on or off, or?
I think it'd be comparable to what we've already done with the wellness center. I mean, essentially all the by the council lifting the resolution or the aspect of the resolution that as it applies to the wellness center, then the onus is on the Parks Department and the Park Board to make the decision about the phasing and that sort of thing. Similarly, if they were to lift the restriction on the bathrooms at the softball field or the ball fields, for example, but the Park Department wasn't ready to actually open them yet, they could wait till they're ready to open them, and they wouldn't have to come back to council to ask permission.
Yeah, that seems like that would be expedient. So really, if we talk about this in two phases here, how we have to modify the resolution first, and then any ratifications that the board is seeking second, can we do that, or do we have to wrap this all into the resolution, because that's what was advertised?
So Terry, there wants to be, or you're seeking council action on those plans?
We would seek council action on amending the current resolution to give us the authority to open the ball fields and those rental facilities, and once they are open, to give us the go-ahead to determine future phased openings of said facilities, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's easy enough. I guess I wasn't sure if you were asking for a vote on the specific plan about opening the gym and that sort of thing at the wellness center, because then that would probably be kind of a separate discussion. But if you're just looking to amend the resolution, then we can certainly do that.
When it comes to the aquatics, the pool and the gymnasium, I think I'm opening that up for discussion. I do believe, as we've talked, since you've already opened it up, that the board does have the authority to slowly bring in those phased openings. But I was looking for council, ratification on, I look at this as group decisions, I really do, and these are large decisions to make when it comes to the pools, the gyms. So that's more of a conversation, but when it comes to official action, really it comes down to Derby Downs, Lions Park, those, and the ball fields.
Ball field bathroom.
Golf course and campground.
Correct. Thank you.
So we got Lions Park, Derby Downs, golf course, campground, and ball complexes. If the council would modify the resolution to open the buildings at those locations, then the park board can tell the park employees when they're ready to open certain elements within those. They have the authority.
I would make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Vilhauer. Second by Hoyer. And Jason, did you have a comment?
I got a comment, Terry. If we open these ball fields, My concern is there going to be stipulations that they are only open to, say, with the Softball Association in town, Lake City Slow Pitch Softball? Are they going to be limited to local teams only? Because I know there's 3 teams that come down from Sisseton, and their COVID situation up there keeps going up. Or if they have a tournament, is this tournament going to be limited to local teams only? Because I don't want teams from Brown County coming down.
Right. Let me expand then on the board conversation that when we put this in the hands of the associations, a team, in order to get on the fields, must contact an association that directly represents their sport of play. Example, if you're a junior Olympic youth slow pitch softball team, you need to get with that association to get a field, a time and a field, and at that point, that association will give you the requirements to be able to practice. So if a team from Roberts County wants to come down and it's an adult team, they would actually have to contact the Lake City Slow Pitch Softball. At that point, and I can talk to them, but at that point, my hopes would be that association would say, you're not part of our association. This facility is not available at this time. This complete first step is nothing to do with structured tournaments or league play. This is strictly practices. With our hopes on May 26th, the board, we can see this is a test cycle. Are the teams going to adhere to what we asked? Are they going to follow the guidelines? If we as a staff and board come back next Tuesday and feel that none of this was taken seriously or they weren't following, the board very well may not open up structured league play or tournaments. So this is really a 2-week period that we can get a good grip on what's happening. If people are following it, people are respecting it, then we'll open up, those games, those tournaments. But with having to go through your local association to get even on the field, may help that out-of-town team coming down, Councilman.
All right, Councilman Hoyer.
TK, I mean, again, it sounds like you got a good handle on this. I mean, you guys have been really thorough. You keep citing the CDC for most of these things. I'm very okay with delegating a lot of that authority to you guys to do these phased openings as well. I said it last time, I'm saying it again. But the thing I kind of have some concern about is that if you're doing baseball and softball at the complex and you don't have bathrooms open, or even the parks for that matter, if someone has to go, they're going to find somewhere to go. I worry that it might be better just to open the restroom. I don't know if we can find a way to have someone clean them, but I just, the concern is if you don't have them open, they'll just find somewhere to go.
In regards to that, Councilman Hoyer, that conversation was held, and they're going to hold practices to no more than an hour and 15 minutes with an emphasis, please go before you arrive. But we do understand, and, all jokes aside, it's going to happen. You're not going to go around with somebody having to use the restroom. Those are things we just don't staff those ball complexes. If we get to that point, we can look at saying, hey, each association member, here's a key. We're not going to open them, but if you do have a situation, someone needs to use our facility, here you go. And we may put the sanitation on that association, but that was discussed by every association, and they all agreed that typically we don't open till about this time of year every year, and teams come out there April 1, weather permitting, practicing. So this isn't new, really. There's been practices going on with no restrooms for decades. And everybody was on board to accept the no restrooms. And does it happen? We're both kidding ourselves if we say it doesn't. But it is a big undertaking. Being short-staffed, I've directed to not hire any new people at this point. So we're doing all we can to keep up, and we don't have the people at this point to go and sanitize restrooms that we really wouldn't have to.
Right. And if we do stock them with supplies, I don't think that's actually a terrible idea to put it on the teams. If they're wanting to use them, just ask them to do a courtesy quick one over for sanitation at the end. I mean, I think that's a pretty adult way of handling it.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm making a note right now.
Yep.
That, I mean, I agree with you. It's not asking a lot, and it's probably a nice little feature to have available. So,
yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
Councilman Lallam?
Thank you. Hey, TK, appreciate that. It sounds like the board was pretty open to that opening up earlier. I know I got a little feedback on that because it didn't open. Sounds like it was a technicality of sorts with the bathroom. I sat through the Park and Rec board meeting last Monday. Also went through one through JO softball. I believe it was on Thursday or Friday. They're putting those onto the coaches to clean their equipment, as well as give direction. I know USA Softball has given direction to the organizations as to what they need to do as far as cleaning their equipment, making sure people are staying out. So there's some pretty big discussions being had, not just at a local level, but at a national level. The bathrooms, I've been doing this for several years now. They're not open during practices, and you make sure that you go beforehand type of deal. So until you get into the game modes, that's a whole nother animal at that point. So, as far as the park board on that outdoor pool, is that something that they got to make a decision on here shortly?
Preferably, yeah. I mean, it's talking to the staff. We're 2 to 3 weeks to be able to go from the point we're at right now to get it open. But here's what we're not thinking of is we haven't been able to do lifeguard training classes. Right now, we wouldn't have enough staff to truly open the aquatic center. And that's a 30-hour class. We really are behind the 8 ball. Just today, City of Sioux Falls did wave the white flag.
Yeah.
They did say, and I know Don well, and he basically, when I talked to him, said, the financial contribution for 1/10 of a facility we normally provide, we're going to have to cut down attendance to almost, a fifth of what we normally provide. And and this is conversation, but it goes as far as, when lifeguards rotate every 15 minutes, they're asking the lifeguard before they get off that stand to sanitize their lifeguard station. The handrails, things like that. And it just seems in that outdoor pool environment for an aquatic center, what they're asking is just astronomical for the return. And it would be different, on my end, wanting to provide everything to the community. If we didn't have that indoor pool ready to go when we release a little more guidelines, I'd feel like we really need to do everything you can to open up that because kids need something to do. But we still do have an indoor pool, a beautiful, it's got a water park feature to it. And I think that's what we really need to focus on, is that indoor. And if we can open with some stipulations we can adhere to, we can have a lot more open swims during the summer. Granted, there's a roof on it and it's not the same. But when I look at when I look at the pool requirements to be able to open, it's just astronomical on the demands. And, it doesn't make a lot of sense at this point, considering even where we're at on May 18th, we're looking at probably June 15th before we could open those doors. And we close May 15th because provided school does start, kids are going back to college, high school, fall sports by May 15th. So you're talking less than a 60-day season.
August.
Oh, August. I'm sorry, August. Right. For the shutdown period.
A couple questions I have then is, if they decided not to do that, is there a way that people could utilize that without having to become members of the wellness center, for someone that they want their kids to be able to go to the pool and things like that? Can we have it where they go directly in, maybe a separate access if they're not a wellness member?
Yep. We've always not approached that, but I think this year is special in so many ways that we would probably create a pool pass. Just for members of the community that didn't need the fitness or didn't want the fitness wellness side, just to have their kid be able to enjoy a pool, things like that. We would be happy to go that route. We do have 2 different accesses to that pool that we can make that happen, and would be willing to.
Yeah, I mean, if it's me, I'd recommend that they don't open the outdoor pool just with the guidelines and what you guys are talking about as far as the stipulations to get it open and how, you're at 15 minutes at a guard station, you got to clean it down. It's going to take you a couple of minutes. I mean, you're going to literally be about every 5 minutes, you're going to be wiping down a chair.
Right. And,
So-
and that's, our inner tubes for slides and lazy rivers. And, it's asking a lot from staff. I think people would, if we did open, I think they may be more miserable being there with all the guidelines than enjoying it. So.
Well, and if they're not going to be able to use the, the slide and the lazy river, I mean, that really shuts down half of your aquatic center anyway.
It
It's
does.
very similar at that point to the wellness center's pool.
Correct.
I mean,
And
if we want to
that's
look at it that route.
Right, and that's our thoughts, And we don't have the expense to open up the wellness. It's, we never did drain it. We never did stop filtering and that kind of thing. So that pool's ready to go. So.
And I got some people from the general public that want to see that open just for lap swim, if nothing else. That would be something, maybe you could talk to their board and see if they'd be open to listening to that, and maybe just as of right now until you guys fully develop something, but maybe lap swim be allowed by appointment type deal.
Right, and we're prepared for that. Not only general guests, but swim team, everybody else. I would share my screen. I don't know if I'm as good as Heath on sharing here. I sure hope you don't get the wrong thing that pops up here. But right here, this is what my recreation staff submitted to me. If you look at step 2, that's kind of what I'm referring to right now. Whether I need to read through that, but, it talks about the gym being kind of cohabitants only, lap swims.
None of
one
that
swim
is affecting the resolution, though. We have a motion on the floor that this does not pertain to. So
Correct.
The
only thing,
go ahead, Terry.
No, the only thing, with timing, by the time we get to the next council meeting, the first Monday of June, honestly, we're well beyond the functionality of opening the aquatic center at that point. That's the only reason I kind of have this discussion at this point.
Okay, so the motion is that the resolution be modified to allow opening Lions Park, Derby Downs, golf course, bathrooms, campground bathrooms, and ball field buildings. And we have a motion and a second on that. Councilman Holeen.
Thank you, Mayor. This question will be for Matt, and then follow up with TK. Matt, from legal counsel position, since the wellness center is already open, we don't need to make special. We don't need to add them in to allow the Park and Rec Board to open it up for lap swim, do we? Would be my understanding that we do not need council action, but I just want your verification because TK specifically asked if council needed to have a voice on that. So Matt, if you would weigh in on that, and TK, based upon Matt's answer, if you're okay with that.
Yes, that's correct. Once the wellness center was opened up by the council, it's under the authority of the Park and Rec Department and the board. So that decision does not need to be legally ratified by the council. Now, I'm still a little unclear though if they want some sort of action. So, but no, there needs to be nothing done by the council as it relates to opening the pool for lap swim and the like.
Notice that the council did not have the outdoor pool listed as a building to open. So if this motion passes, the outdoor pool is closed still. And no action is action. No action means that pool does not open. And so that's following suit with, I was on the phone with the mayors across the state, and one by one they're announcing they're not opening their pools. Many of the cities are not opening their pools. There might be some that are, but there are more that are not. So that the action to close the pool is, or keep it closed, I guess we could modify the motion to clarify, but right now, with no action, that outdoor pool is closed by our resolution. Councilman Holden?
I would disagree with that though, because the intention of the action by the resolution of the council is to close buildings. And so,
Okay, well, you have to go through a building to get into the pool. I don't know if there's, you go through the locker rooms and the concession. That's how you get into the pool. So if that building isn't open, I don't know, is there a side gate you could come in? Maybe there is. I guess there probably is.
I guess, for clarity, if there needs to be something just, because we could just specifically lay out in the resolution, we could modify it to just specifically lay out what is closed still, and it could be, it doesn't have to be buildings. It could be City Hall. It could be the outdoor pool, et cetera. It could just be specifically the ones that are closed, and anything else that's not specifically referenced is open.
Mayor, I would amend, I made the motion, right?
Yes.
I would amend my motion to add or clarify that decision regarding the outdoor pool be left in the hands of the Park and Rec Board and staff.
Second.
Okay, so we can add that to it, and we've got a correction to the motion by the maker and the seconder. I'm sure that's the wrong word.
There you go.
Other discussion?
Mayor.
Councilman Holeen?
Thank you, Mayor. So in other words, TK, us telling you not to open for lap swimming at the Wellness Center, in light of us not taking action, is giving you the green light to open it as you see fit. That's
the way I understand it, correct.
Yes.
Yes.
So I say take that as your green light to open it up for lap swimming. I would also just like to make a quick comment. I know TK touched upon this. I feel really bad that the outdoor pool will not likely open this summer, but given the, let's say, financial situation the city is in and what we're looking at, the pool would lose a lot of money this year in operations, and to ask the taxpayers of Watertown to fund that, knowing it would lose money, as nice as it would be to have that pool open, it's a tough ask to the citizens of Watertown to make that sacrifice. And I just want to make that clear, is it will lose a lot of money. And that's part of the reason why I'm okay not fighting this or letting it be close. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Councilman Villar?
I've got a comment, but I think we need to vote on the amended motion. Then I've got a comment on the main motion when we get to it. So
Okay.
I just want to make sure I understood things properly.
So the motion has been amended, and could you repeat it?
It's the same motion with the understanding that decision regarding the outdoor pool be left in the hands of the Park and Rec Board and staff.
Okay. And now we got a motion and a second. And so this will be a vote to amend the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Kristen?
Albertson?
Aye.
Bueller?
Aye.
Boyer?
Aye.
Holeen?
Aye.
Lallam?
Aye.
Manti?
Aye.
Rademski?
Aye.
Roby?
Aye.
Billhauer?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, so we have an amended motion. Is there any discussion about the amended motion?
I just want to make a comment because I think there were 4 of us from the council that participated or listened to that meeting last Monday night, and I really appreciate what the board and staff did that night. And I think we came away with the understanding, and I spoke out in favor of not feeling like the council needed to weigh in on all these decisions. Now, I realize that after the fact, I think it kind of came up that, hey, when it comes to buildings, we do have to weigh in on that, so I think that's why we're having the conversation we are tonight. Well, in the meantime, I know we were reached out by some people that thought, hey, are we usurping the authority of the park board? Don't we trust our staff? Don't we have any confidence in them? That is not the case. I want to make that clear that we're ratifying exactly what the board and staff recommended last Monday night. It was a matter of we need to follow proper procedure. So I want to clarify that, yes, we do have confidence in our staff and our board.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else? Councilman Hoyer?
Not to derail too much, and I'm just asking real quick, but do we have any updates for what we are doing for youth programs this summer? Are we doing anything? Are we looking at doing anything for that?
Let's get through.
Sure.
Let's get through this.
Okay.
Councilman Lallam?
Yeah, Mayor, can we just go through what's still going to be closed if this passes?
Okay, and I don't have a list in front of me, but I will say the City Hall is still closed to the public, although business can be done, business is going on and people can make appointments to come in. The library is closed to the public, although people can still check materials out. They're doing curbside delivery. The buildings, for instance, the police department and we'll just talk about the police department. That building is closed to the public, but people can make an appointment to come in and talk with a police officer. They can arrive there into the lobby and be allowed to enter, but they can't just walk in. The fire department is closed to the public. The street department is closed to the public. Wastewater, solid waste, those buildings are closed to the public. The business that goes on there is going on. Okay, rattling off the top of my head. I can't think of any others. And what am I missing, Terry? You know, the park buildings that I'm missing?
Yeah, as far as park buildings that we still remain closed would be the Family Aquatic Center, as discussed, the field house, which is also our main office, which we are still, as the mayor alluded to, doing 100% efficiency on serving the public. The city auditorium still remains closed, as does the Mace Ice Arena. Those would be the ones that we are still closed on as far as public park and rec facilities.
And Mayor, if I can, do we have any idea when we're looking at opening the library? Because that's probably the one that has the most amount of, I would say, public ingress, egress, where people are going in to try to check out books and things of that nature.
We don't have any plans, and there's a library board that is monitoring that. They have not made a recommendation at this point. Like Dan, you're the liaison. Did they discuss that at the last library board meeting?
Thanks, Mayor. We did talk about it. No decision was made at that point in time. So at this point, they're still operating under a closed for the public, but offering books and all sorts of things to the public if it's a call in, and they meet the needs of them at this point in time. But there was discussion about opening it and when and how to.
And that's, pretty hands-on place with, especially with children's programs in the summertime, with kids are touching books and materials and objects. That will be a difficult one to open safely. And I think I hit them. I may have missed some. So is that good enough answer for you?
Yeah, I was just trying to get a brief overview on it.
Yeah, okay. Any other comments or questions? Then I will look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Kristen, roll call vote, please.
Okay. Albertson.
Aye.
Bueller.
Aye.
Hoyer.
Aye.
Pauline.
Aye.
Lallam.
Aye.
Manty.
Aye.
Rademski.
Aye.
Roby.
Aye.
Billhauer?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
All right, thank you. And then now to follow up with Councilman Hoyer's question about an update. Terry, are you still on?
Yeah.
An update on the rec programs.
Okay, thank you. And Councilman, where we're at is actually next week, we plan to do a media release, both traditional media and social media. The Recreation Division has went through all of our programs and have determined, as we sit today with guidelines, what we can offer. Certain programs have been pushed back a little bit to prepare, but we do plan on having a sufficient number of programs this summer offered to the community. Those that we feel can adhere to the current guidelines we're going to offer, and you can expect to see, I believe the date we shot for was next Wednesday, a week from Wednesday, to go ahead and redo our marketing scheme to get those out. So the big one that's kind of sitting in the balance, our largest summer program, which is our baseball softball program. That one we're kind of seeing how it all works within the complexes to see if we can, the difference is, we're talking about adults or teenagers. A T-ball, we've got 45 4-year-olds trying to run around understanding social distancing. That's a tough thing to do. So, that's what we're looking at. But no, we will roll out programs as far as the marketing come next week. And our hopes is by that second full week of June to launch some opportunities.
All right, thank you. Councilman Billhauer?
TK, I've got a question for you too. You talk about phase 2 at the wellness center. Okay, which would include the lap swimming. When are you ready to go into phase 2?
I will, after tonight's meeting, I will meet with staff tomorrow.
Okay.
We can, as long as we have the staff and the ability to, obviously one part is, making people aware of our expectations. My hopes would be late this week, worst case, kick it off a week from tonight, worst case.
Good enough. Thanks, TK.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have anything? Oh, Councilman Lallam, you have your hands up.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. TK, to your point, did listen in on that, like I said, the softball meeting. Part of the deal that Park and Rec has offered or asked for is that they wear their own helmets and things of that nature. I know that's going to be tough for some of those teams, especially the younger kids. So if the general public is listening and they can, you got a couple helmets sitting around, or they're willing to donate a few bucks to that to help a younger kid get a helmet so they can play. Just more of a call to action. Hopefully someone can take that and go with it.
And on that line, Adam, if we determine, that we kind of hold off a while, we do have an abundance of equipment that we would be willing to check out to different people. So we're, we're all in this together. So we're here to help when we can.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on, item I is authorization for the mayor to sign an addendum to the development agreement for Williston Edition. And I'll ask Heath Von Eye to introduce this one, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So Scott Munger is the acting agent for Williston Incorporated. They own lot 2 and 3 of the Williston Edition. He has submitted a commercial site plan application and building permit application to construct some storage units, some additional storage units on these lots that are south of the already developed lot 1 of the subdivision. I'll pull up a map here for reference. But what they're proposing right now and in front of the council this evening is an amendment to the prior development agreement. When they developed lot 1, it was agreed upon at that time that an extension of 5th Avenue Southwest be constructed when they develop lot 2. What the developer is proposing is that we either forego that requirement now and require it at another future date, or future development to the west that might trigger the need for that street extension. And there's also a couple other options here that we've talked about internally as staff and with the developer on what we could look at doing. I'll quickly name those three options that we've come up with and we've proposed, and they're in the council summary notes here. The first step the council could take, in our opinion, is to require that Fifth Avenue South be installed during the development of Lot 2, as is currently required per the previous active development agreement. No amendment necessary in that scenario, or it would be a rejection of this permit tonight. Second option, we feel, would be to amend the development agreement and to remove that Fifth Street has to be installed upon the development of Lot 2. There is still language in the development agreement that allows for the city to make assessments for local improvements to be installed when it is warranted, as well as it would be required to be installed upon development to the west of the Williston addition. So it's pretty much removing that requirement from this developer at this point in time and making it, you could rely on the other current development agreement language to build that as an assessment at a later date. The third option is something we've explored too as staff that some communities would exercise is we could collect the estimated funds that it would cost to build Fifth Avenue from the developer right now at this point in time today in order to issue his building permits and proceed with development of Lot 2. We would collect those funds, we'd put them in our coffers and save that money for the point in time in the future when it was deemed necessary to extend Fifth Avenue. And then we would have that money on hand for a city-run project to make that construction effort complete at some point in time in the future. Those are a few of the options that we've thought about, we've proposed to the council that we could do with this. And I'll pull up that map here for reference. So we're out here on the southwest corner of the lake, Lake Compesca. And Lot 1, you can see there's 2 existing storage units on it that were developed. I guess I don't recall off the top of my head what year they were, not too long ago. At that time, the development agreement said, okay, you don't have to build this street extension of Fifth. You can wait until they build on Lot 2. And then this extension would be required. And as described, that's what the developer's wanting to do now is build on Lot 2 and see if there's a way to negotiate out the requirement of Fifth being built at this time. There's a lot of different angles and thoughts that could go into this as far as whether this street extension is necessary. I can tell you we have ordinances in place today that it's required to have the curb and gutter line established in order to issue a building permit on a lot. It's important that any developed lot is adjacent to a public street and has access to that public street. Of course, in this case, they would have access to South Lake Drive. They're proposing to share this access here that they currently have for Lot 1, and they would curve it on to Lot 2. And so access isn't an issue. The lack of traffic being generated for this kind of a development to substantiate the need for this street extension is an important factor to weigh into this discussion. It's not like there's a Walmart going in on this lot and we need to have this street built because of the traffic generation that it would create, as an example. There's pros and cons both ways when you look at this, and what we do know is what the development agreement says today, and the developers propose that we amend that to remove this extension requirement from that agreement at this point in time, as far as it being constructed now with Lot 2. Brandy is online as well. She's helped with the discussions with the developer on this, and either her or I can help answer any questions and try to wade through this decision making here.
Okay, I see Matt's hand is up. Matt, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to make just a point of information. Scott's actually not acting on behalf of Williston Inc. He's acting on his own behalf. He's taken over ownership personally of Lot 2. The development agreement still applies to him because it applies to successors and assigns of Williston, but just want to make that clarification.
Okay, and I have a question about the comp plan. When is the land to the west in our comp plan projected to occur?
Yes,
I believe.
Greg.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Heath.
No, I was just gonna refer to you, Brandy. I don't know if the comp plan gets as specific to what time frame that might be, but if you know, Brandy, please chime in.
I believe this area that's already annexed was prior to 2025, and then everything outside to the west and the north is, I believe, just put as future, but they didn't even, I can look that up quick. I can't recall off the top of my head.
But to the west is what the road would serve, and that said 2025. So within 5 years.
I'll look that up, but just, are you guys able to see my screen there that I shared?
Yes.
Yes.
So the addendum that was on the council agenda actually wasn't the most recent. So when Matt had referenced that Scott will be the owner, so it won't be Williston that's in the agenda packet that was posted online. It'll actually be just Scott Munger. So this is the updated of the most recent addendum.
Okay, thank you. I see Matt's hand is up. Matt, did you have a comment or a question?
Sorry, that I just had left it up from previously. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Councilman Hoyer?
Well, I guess, do we need to do a motion first, or?
Well, there's different options, so I guess.
Can I ask my question?
You want to ask questions before you come up with which of the.
So, at first, with the idea of this being the same owner, I think the fact that it seems like this is two different property owners now, that kind of makes this a little bit different. Whose responsibility is it for that road down the line? Are they going to share costs since it was originally agreed with the first owner, or?
It runs with the land, so whoever owns the land has to pay for the road.
For lot 2. It
For
runs
both
with
of
lot 2?
them. I
Okay,
mean,
so they split it?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's 2 lots.
Okay.
And they each have equal frontage, so the cost of it would be shared.
Right. I guess the concern that I'm kind of having with it is that if we forego holding up the original agreement, I worry that it's going to create some weirdness down the road, just because we're going to have this strange little obscure cul-de-sac V thing going on, which I see the benefit of not maintaining that extra bit of road, but I don't know, it almost deters someone from building west is what I'm kind of feeling like.
How?
Because then does whoever gets that land behind them trigger them into building a road? So maybe they're going to try and deter someone from wanting to do that.
True. So the requirement as it stands today is no building permit on lot 2 until that road's built. And that's what they want to change. So the 2 options to that are, 1, just don't make them build the road. Later, if the road needs to be built because someone to the west needs it, then do an assessment project and assess. That's another option. And the third option is, and I may have these out of order from the way they're listed, would be to collect the money right now. Don't build the road right now, but collect the money and keep it in an account or use it for another purpose. But then when development occurs to the west and you actually need that road, then the city builds the road and we don't need anybody's permission. We just go in there and we build the road and there's no assessment.
Right, but inflation occurs over that time.
Right, but we've had the benefit of the money in time value too. So, I mean, that's an option, and the city has done that before.
Okay.
So, it's up to the council. Councilman Vilhauer?
Heath, can you give us what your recommendation is out of these 3 options?
It's hard to have a, and I apologize, it's hard to have a firm recommendation in this case. If you want to do it cleanly by a development regulation standpoint, yeah, building the road would be the primary option that we would select. Given the facts in this case, well, first thing I'll comment on, when you don't do that, when you don't follow the clean regulations to a T, like Councilman Hoyer, I think it was, just mentioned, you end up with a little bit of a mess on your hand to have to clean up later. That's the biggest downfall with postponing this. Either we're going to have to administer a project later on, which is fine, but that's cost and time and drain on the city staff to have to do that. But we would have the money in hand to pay for the construction. So that is an option, but it's just not ideal. The other option of waiting and assessing it later, we all know how assessments can go. As property owners change hands over the years and they buy property, even though they know there's a development agreement attached to it, anytime the next council comes forward wanting to assess something, it becomes a difficult process, and people generally aren't in favor of assessments, whether they knew about them or not, and that's just a reality we would have to deal with at that point in time in the future. So putting things off for later is, out of those contexts, is never ideal. Now, speaking to this scenario, like I said, it's not a heavy traffic generator. We're going to have a stub of street there for us to maintain and plow and take care of, and asphalt patch and crack seal and all that stuff that costs us money for something that's really not going to be serving a real lot of traffic at all until that development to the west occurs. So on the flip side of the coin, that's where I could see it being, it's not a bad option to maybe put this off. It's just we got to make sure if we do put it off, we got a solid plan in place and it's well documented, so we know who's on the hook later on, is what it boiled down to in my mind.
All right, thank you.
Just to follow up then, I mean, I drove that last week. That literally right now is a road to nowhere if we were to build that. But I also understand the concern about, if we don't get it done now and we have to go through the assessment process, that's going to get messy. My fear is forgotten, lost, whatever. I didn't like the idea of collecting the money up front initially because of, costs increased for building a road more than what we're earning off that money. But as I look at the options now, I'd be inclined to collect the money up front and, then we build the road when we have to or when we need to.
Okay, Councilman Bueller's had his hand up a long time. Councilman
Yeah,
Bueller?
thank you, Mayor. It was starting to hurt. Anyway, my question, Heath, does this not seem like a good opportunity for a right of waiver to protest? Could we do that with this road? If by chance it were two different developers, it would be a half street they'd be responsible for that's adjacent to their property. But to me, the way it lays right now, it looks kind of crazy to have a street, that stub in there, and something that we've got to maintain. But I think if that's possible to do this as a right of waiver to protest, that may be a good way to go about this.
We already have a waiver of right to protest. It's part of the development agreement.
What's wrong with that then? I mean, why can't we exercise that?
We always have the right to order improvements made, we meaning the city council, and it's just that when it changes hands, the people don't like it when you do that. And we've collected lots of waivers of right to protest through the years. We have never ever cashed in on one that I'm aware of. And we've tried a couple times, and it became, very uncomfortable when people come to the hearing, resolution of necessity that you're passing for a road improvement. And yeah, I know I signed that, but it's going to cost me this amount of money, and please don't. And it's just hard later. You're just putting off the pain. So, but I totally get all three options have their pros and cons, and it's a tough choice.
Madam Mayor, if I could.
Excuse me. Should we as a city then, should we get rid of that method, the right of waiver to protest? Is that something we should eliminate?
Well, the council doesn't ever have to do the waiver of right to protest. The council can insist the improvements are made before any building permits are issued. But we didn't in this case, and the developer built two structures in there. And the council drew the line and said, okay, you're going to do that, but that's it. Then you're going to have to do the road. And now he wants another building permit, and he's going, please, don't make me build the road. And it's the same, it happens over and over again. It's a difficult thing to order someone, even if they've signed like he has, an agreement to do it later. Now is later. He wants a building permit on lot 2, and he's asking you, please don't make me. This is what happens with waivers of right to protest. That's what he signed when he got permission to build the first development. And the council said, okay, we won't make you now, but when you come in for that permit on lot 2, we're going to have to make you. Okay, he signs a waiver. And, you know, I get it. I don't want extra roads either. But there will be development to the west. Our comp plan says it's within 5 years. And at that time, if it's a waiver of right to protest, there's going to be pressure on that developer not to develop at this time because it's going to force somebody to have to pay their share. They aren't wanting that right now, and there's that element in it. So it's not pleasant for the council to cram it down the throat of anybody at any time. It's also not pleasant to do what the ordinance calls for, which is whenever you do development, you build the road now. People don't want to spend that money because it's a lot of money. But, I mean, those are your choices. And Councilman Radomski?
So the lot to the west, if that guy wants to develop and this road isn't built, and then all of a sudden the turn for the worse, the guy on lot 2 all of a sudden now can't afford to pay for that road because it's been put off, and his financial situation has changed and he can't afford to pay for that road. Who pays for that up front then? And then it goes against the tax roll?
The city pays
for it?
when we do an assessment project, the taxpayers build the road, and then the property owners pay the taxpayers back over time through the assessment. But the taxpayers front it. Still a bunch of hands
They
up.
can pay immediately. They can pay immediately, but they do have the option
they can.
to pay over time.
Right, they can pay it immediately. Who hasn't spoken? Councilman Lallam?
Thank you, Mayor. I would say we really, after going through this for the past almost 3 years of fixing problems of, development agreements and things of that nature, I think our two options are either they build the road or we get the money up front and we hold it and we build the road when they need to do that. I know Don's made that comment several times. It seems like we're always going back and trying to fix something that was done. Maybe we just didn't get all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. So I say we either take the cost of the road now and hold that in there, or we just say, look, you're going to need to, put the road in there. And now it causes us more headache for maintaining and, things of that nature. But at the same time, we don't have to worry about if it's 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road, 25 years down the road, 50 years down the road, like some of our developments that were never completed. So I guess as me, I'd rather we do one of the two options.
Right, and then if the road is there, it does make it more appealing for a developer of the land to the west to not have to wait for that or deal with it. Okay, Councilman Albertson, your hand is up.
Yeah, I was looking at the second option, and I agree that it becomes a bit of a headache for people later. I had to sign when I built my house, and to this day, I still have somebody has the option of coming telling me that I have to put sidewalks in, and I understand that. On the other hand, down the road, it may never happen, and so we may have that road to nothing. And, we still have to look out for the people that are willing to do things in the community, and I'm not really leaning one way or the other necessarily, but I kind of like option 2, and I know it's a headache later, but it's also good for our community when we try to work with them.
All right, thank you. Councilman Roby?
Madam Mayor, Adam kind of teed me up for this one, but the problem we've had over the years is inconsistency. We've been inconsistent on this. We had a gentleman in front of our council 3-4 years ago on a sidewalk issue. He asked the right question. That question was, Why did I get assessed and paid for half of this when I see other people doing projects, be it roads or sidewalks, they don't get assessed for it? And Sarah, you're correct about one thing. The city hasn't had the fortitude to follow its own rules. Now, nobody wants to pay an assessment, but when you buy a piece of property, you assume responsibility for that property. And whether it's a new road, whether it's we're going to pave over a gravel road, you took that responsibility when you bought the property. What happens is we get a lot of complaints, nobody wants to pay for it, and then what happens is the rest of the community pays for somebody else's street. I think that's wrong. Now, the request before us is a reasonable one. The road isn't going to get used. So it's going to sit there and it will deteriorate over time until it does get some activity. So I think the request is reasonable. But the issue is this. Whether it's me on the council down the road when this thing comes up, will the council stick to its own rules? That's the question. It's hard to do. It shouldn't be. It's uncomfortable at times. But isn't that what was agreed upon when all this was done? So my take is this. It's a reasonable request because the road's not going to get used. The assessment can carry with it. Will the city follow its own rules when the road does get built? That's the question I'll ask us all.
Yeah. So 5 years ago, when the original one came in, that's when the first pass was given. We'll do it later, kick it down the road. So, I mean, you can keep kicking it down the road, but it's, I think everybody understands the implications. Councilman Rademski?
Didn't we just a month and a half ago or so pass design standards for engineering for roads and widths and everything like that? So I guess to me, if we put this off any longer, we kind of going against what we just passed a month and a half ago.
Well, they still would have to build it to standards. Councilman Hoyer?
I guess for me, and this kind of ties into what Don was saying, there was an agreement that was made. It's hard to hold people accountable. When you take on that agreement, just like Don said, and you get that property, you know what the agreement was. You know what strings come with it. And believe me, I understand too, yeah, we're going to have a road that's kind of sitting there not really doing anything. Let's not act like we don't have more of those in town anyway. But a lot of it is the principle of the thing. It's the precedent that we set. Passing the buck down is a huge concern. Thinking that, I like Don's word for it, that others are going to have the fortitude to enforce something that should have been enforced from the start is a concern. Because it's hard to hold people accountable. But the agreement's there. And I 100% think that it is a deterrent to whoever develops to the west of that if that road's not already in there. Because then they have another timeline kickback that's going to happen. And they're going to be waiting just even longer to get their property going. I feel like if we keep passing the buck, and this is another one of those precedent things, when we pass things, when we write ordinance, unless there's a really great reason not to, we should be sticking to it. And we made an agreement, so I'd say we stick to it just because we've seen enough projects this year that have already kicked up that show when we didn't.
All right, thank you.
That's it.
Councilman Holeen?
Thank you, Mayor. I will just concur with my colleagues' comments just there and just say I'm a fan of getting done today and not passing off a problem to a future council. With that said, I would support option 1 or option 3. I would not support option 2. But I will kind of open it up. I'm okay making a motion if we're done talking, but I don't want to cut anyone off if anyone has comments. So I can't see who has their hands raised.
Okay.
And I don't want to, I think Alderman Villauer was okay doing 3. I'm okay with that. I would prefer 1 slightly.
I'm okay with either 1 or 3, but I do not like 2.
Okay, Councilman Bueller, did you want to speak?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay, Councilman Lallam, your hand is up.
Yeah, I'm good with 1 or 3, but I'll make the motion that we take, option number 3. And my reasoning is that, we collect the funds of what it would cost to construct, and then we can put the road in as it's needed down the line, and we don't have to maintain it, and we don't have to, watch it deteriorate for potentially 5 to 10 years before it would get utilized. So that would be, my motion, I guess.
Okay, we have a motion by Lallam and a second by Holeen. And I'll just say this for the record. When we did this on 11th Street, we collected the money to construct 11th Street north of 14th Avenue North. The amount that we collected, even inflated per the Consumer Price Index, was not even 20% of the amount that we spent building the road. So the amount that we collect
isn't going to equal the road.
You might want to be generous in your estimate and then write some sort of thing. If it doesn't cost this much, we'll give back the extra. That sort of thing, rather than if it costs more than this, we'll just have the taxpayers pay for it. You could still assess the amount that is not collected and keep it in the Consumer Price Index inflation, and if it still comes out more than you collected, assess that extra back. I guess, I don't know. Councilman Holt.
Well, I just worry that we won't be able to collect if we're too short, and that's kind of where it ties back. I mean, the cost to maintain that short of a road is probably not going to outprice the inflation that's going to happen. I mean, we keep watching these projects that we do where we build roads and then we get a change order in the same year because we couldn't guess the price. I worry that we're going to try and guess this thing now. It's not even going to be close. And then we're just going to end up making the taxpayer pay for it down the road.
Councilman Rademski?
I don't feel it's right for the taxpayers to continually have to bail out developers, or in situations like this where, they know what it was up front, and then it's more money, more burden on the taxpayer because somebody's development didn't pan out.
Yep. Councilman Hoyer?
Do we have any other examples of kind of inflation on roads like that, just so we can kind of make a more educated decision? I mean, do we have any other examples in the city that we can base this on?
Well, we could certainly take some data, and for our cost, which is different from developer cost, if the developer can do this for 50 grand, it's going to cost us 75 because we have to take the low bidder, we have to, advertise and all that, where they have partnerships and agreements, and they don't have to advertise and take the low bidder. That's only for public projects, and we know that makes it more expensive than a private development. It's cheaper if you're a developer to build the road than it is for us, the public, to build it. So that needs to be factored in. We would need to use our costs if we're going to build it, not developer costs. So that's, something the developer needs to keep in mind too. Well, I can build it for 50. Why are you making me give you 75 for you to build it 5 years from now? Well, because our costs are going to be higher than the developer costs. And we can use real data. We built a road last year. We know how much it costs. We built several roads. So we've got these data available for estimating purposes, if that's what you choose to do. Bruce, Councilman Bueller, is your hand up?
No, Mayor, I don't know why that shows that.
Okay, you got to click on the hand. There you go.
There we go.
Oh, it came back. Click once.
That's Adam.
That's what I did.
Okay.
I don't have my hand raised. So.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Councilman, you just say something if you do. Councilman Lallam?
Question, if they don't like that option, can they still put it in the road then?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, really what we do is we come up with a price that we feel is adequate for the city's responsibility of putting that in. And if the developer comes back and says, well, I can do it cheaper, they have that option to go back in and currently put the road in as it sits.
Absolutely.
with the design standards that we have in place.
Right.
So we're saying this is what our amount is, this is what we feel that it's gonna cost. If you feel that you can get it done for cheaper than that, by all means, you know.
Well, they
build
most
your road.
certainly can. No one would argue that. They can get it done cheaper. But is it worth it? I mean.
That's a decision that any developer's gotta make.
Yeah, right.
Then, to that point though, just to think about that, if they do decide to build it, then it goes back to the city having to maintain it, so.
Right.
If they did it, they'd still have to do that. We'd still have to maintain that.
Yeah, we would follow all those proper closeout procedures too, just to make sure it's on the city's books and off the developer's books once it's finally constructed and inspected.
So really, they have option 1 and 3, because we tell them the dollar amount. If they don't like it, they get it done, and it's back in our hands again.
Right. Okay, Councilman Roby?
I'll muddy the water here a little bit. I'd be okay with option 2 if we just follow our own contract.
We did option 2. Option 2 was done 5 years ago, and now it's time to call the work to be done, and we're considering again doing it again. So you're just moving it every time it comes up, right? I mean, our ordinance said you do this now, 5 years ago, and we said, okay, we'll just get a waiver of right to protest, and we'll sign a development agreement, and you'll do it as soon as you develop lot 2. Okay, now they're developing lot 2, and they want to move it again. So, I mean, I know it's a tough one, but building the road now might not be a road to nowhere. When we do that, there's always hope that development is coming soon. And most of our subdivisions have these little nubs of road for the next development that comes. Brandy has her hand up.
Oh.
Brandy, did you want to speak? Urban
Yes,
planner.
thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to throw in there too that if you guys are looking at option 3, we'd have to contemplate if that street is never constructed, and then if we would give that, say that the development to the north or the west doesn't need that street at all, doesn't need that extension of Fifth Avenue, and it's something completely different, and they're getting access from somewhere else. So then if we were collecting that money now, and then if the street never is built or never is warranted, the nice thing about the language with 2 is just that you are still you're still requiring that the street would be extended if it's warranted, if development to the north or west happens. So the only thing that's really changing is that you're saying that it's still not warranted even though lot 2 is being developed, but it would be warranted if there were development to the north or the west. If that makes sense.
Right.
And I also do have the comp plan pulled up if you want me to share my screen for that.
Can you just say what it says?
Yeah, so it's that area that is platted right now, that is to develop before 2025, and then there's an area farther to the west, not that whole quarter section, but that is so that area is after 2035. So they don't anticipate the quarter section to develop until after 2035. But some of that area to the west of the area that's not platted yet, that is anticipated to be before 2025. So there is a small portion farther to the west of what's platted that the comp plan is anticipating that it would develop before 2025.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Hoyer?
I just, thank you, Mayor. I would ask, isn't this how we end up with things like modern day gravel roads in our town? Just weird, goofy agreements where we start kind of twisting things around and then stuff just doesn't happen. Because, I mean, there's examples of those roads that exist in town where somebody was supposed to do something and then they didn't. And now we just have this weird, strange gravel road. Now I get it, like paving it, you have a paved road that goes to nowhere, but it's just, and believe me, I'm really torn on it because I'm very like strong towns. Let's not build roads. They're just something you end up having to pay for. It's just I worry that I don't know. Two almost looks desirable if we're thinking that this just never is going to develop to the west of it. But if we think it's going to, and we're taking that bet, then it seems like the clean thing to do to just do it. But I do kind of like Adam's point with if the city gives you a bid, and you don't like the bid, then I mean that's your decision. Because we have to, if we're going to go that route, it has to be at the city price. Because again, I don't want to put this on the taxpayers to pay for something they shouldn't have had to.
Right. And chances are the developer's just going to build the road.
Likely.
Because why would they build the road for one price or give that times 40% more?
Well, but
for a future construction.
But then I sit there and I go, then why are we even doing option 3 if it makes like no financial sense at all for the developer to even consider it?
Well, that's for the council to decide. And then, we did just adopt the comp plan and acknowledge that we think that the land to the west will develop within 5 years. And so having this road constructed will probably precipitate development to the west. It could, but nobody knows. We aren't the owners. So we do have a motion to move forward with option 3, which is to collect the funds.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm still sharing my screen here. I think that's coming through okay, but I just wanted a quick point out. If we go with option 3, I think maybe a fair way to get that cost estimate, what I've seen work well in the past is we get an estimate from the developer's engineer, and then the city engineering office reviews that and will likely have to inflate it based on our prices that we commonly see based on recent bids. But at least it gives us a fair starting point to get that estimate from the developer's engineer as a starting point. It just wanted to throw that out there for discussion purposes if you're okay with us proceeding that way if we go with option 3.
So we already have that. It's 5 years old, and it was estimated to be $59,000. That includes the sewer 5 years ago.
So what I would do is request the developer to give me a new estimate on today's costs from their engineer, and then we build from that.
Factor in our costs.
Yeah.
Councilman Billhauer?
Is our motion adequate then to encompass that, or are we good to go with what we've got?
I think it is. Matt, do you want to say something?
I was just going to throw one other thought in is that if one way that the developer might choose to go with the payment is if the council were to consider offering a payment plan, stretching out what the developer would owe after that's calculated over a term of years, if the council wanted to explore that option.
And when we assess, we give them that option. So that's not a bad plan. Pretty good idea. Any other comments?
Mayor, I don't know if you noticed who just joined. I mean, they might want an opportunity to speak for themselves on this.
So the last name first warmed up, or?
Scott.
I got a Zoom call going here.
Scott, are you wanting to speak about this? I'll give you the floor.
You guys are really quiet.
Can you hear us? I've given you the floor, Scott. This is the mayor. I don't know if he can hear. I don't think he can hear.
Scott, can you hear?
You guys are really, really quiet. I've got my volume maxed on my phone, but it's really quiet.
You have the opportunity to speak if you wish.
Scott, I don't know if it's coming from the room. It's kind of quiet for you, but the mayor just said that you have the opportunity to speak. The floor is yours.
Yeah, can you guys hear me at all?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay. You guys are real quiet, I guess. If you guys can hear me, I guess that works. So, I have no idea where you guys are at on this, or where you're at in the meeting. I just jumped on. I'm out of town right now. But, yeah, I mean, the idea behind what we're asking is, there's the full, I don't know what the right word is, but the road, that's projected maybe distant years into the future to go to the west. I think you guys are calling it Fifth or something like that. We're asking that is placed on the future owner of that land, which is going to be the association of those buildings. I think we're talking about a 200-foot stretch that if it ever has to be put in, if there's ever development to the south or the north or the west, that we would put it in at that point and not today. I guess that's what we're talking about and what we're asking.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Hoyer?
I don't know, but from the sounds of that almost sounds more like whoever buys the building from the developer is going to end up responsible for the road.
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that is essentially option number 2 that Scott just described. It's on the table here for discussion.
That was his request.
Okay.
So are we ready for action? I don't see anybody else with a hand up. So we have a motion on the floor to collect the estimated funds for Fifth Avenue, making the city obligated to install Fifth Avenue in the future when it is warranted due to development to the west. Under this option, the developer is obligated to pay for all infrastructure requirements that serve their development and would prevent future owner obligations. So I'll get a roll call vote, and all those in favor signify by saying aye. Councilman Holing?
Can I speak quick before can I speak quick?
Sure, go ahead, Scott.
All right, I didn't hear, I've got volume now, I can hear you guys. I don't know if I caught all of that, but we by no means, did you say you wanted to put it on the city in the future?
Yes, the option on the floor that was, the motion was to collect the money from you and not require you to build the road right now, but to collect the money. And then in the future, if the road is warranted, the city would build the road without having to come back to you.
Okay. Well, I guess, if that's the case, then if you're collecting the dollars for the road, then I'd rather the road go in and the city can take care of the road now. The idea behind it is if you guys drive out there, you probably see the buildings that are there. We're building 3 more. There's going to be 20 unit holders, which there's an association, and they're all individually owned. So the only way to run that is by an association, which is in place. And so the association owns that common area. And so if this ever had to be done in the future, it would go back to the landowner at that time to be paid for, which would be the association, which we've got written in our association dues, and I've already spoke with all the members of that association. So the owner of the land for that 200 feet we're speaking of is the association, Westside Condos Association. And so I guess that's what I'm looking at is not to collect those dollars today, and not put it in today, keep it green space, which is better for the near future anyway, and we would upkeep that instead of the city having to upkeep that. And if anything ever gets built out in that area, which it's going to be many moons beyond anybody on this call lifetime, it's ag land right now, and the Stone family, I highly doubt, is going to change it from that, knowing where this is 6 miles from town. But if it does, the association would put in that stretch. I mean, but we would take care of it from at this point in time, instead of the city.
Okay, this is an option that isn't part of the motion, but another thing that the city council could do is to write in a clause that if the road has not been warranted within a certain amount of time, and you set the time, 15 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever, that the money will be returned to the landowner. And then in exchange for a waiver of right to protest for the future, if it ever happens. As he's saying, he doesn't think it'll happen.
Like I said, if we put that stretch in today, if we're paying funds out today, we're building it today, and it's going to be turned over to the city, and snow removal is going to be done, lawn care is going to be done, not by our association, but by the city. If I'm putting money today, we're going to put it in today.
All right. Did you want to say something, Councilman Holeen?
I guess I'm just curious, would other people like a little bit more time to think about this? Do we need to make a decision on this tonight?
Well,
Mayor, this is Heath here.
Go ahead, Heath.
I don't want to speak for Scott, but I know he is waiting to get building permits on this lot and get the development going. So I'd defer to Scott if the council wants to wait and he's okay with that, I'd defer to him for his input as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very aware of I get it, all right, 100%. I'm just saying, one way or the other, what we're looking at is never's a long time. I get it, okay? But if you go out and look at this plot of land, all right, and we're fine. I'm one of the owners. I'm one of the 19 owners that's going to be out in this area. We all get it that we're going to pay for this at some point, if it would ever happen. All right. The problem is it's in nobody's. If you see where this is at, I would get it if I had city anywhere near me. This is kind of a very unique area, and it's a road to nowhere right now. And I think it makes more sense to keep a green space for the next 30 to 40 to 50 years than have the city waste taxpayer dollars cleaning snow on a 200-foot stretch of road that doesn't need to be maintained today. But I'm sorry, that's just where we're at on it.
Councilwoman Manty?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, kind of follow up on Heath. I was waiting for a yes or no maybe from you, Scott, of are you willing to wait until the next council meeting for an answer on this, or are you looking for something tonight? I have to admit, when Councilman Oline mentioned, does anybody else need time to think about this? I've been keeping notes, but I think I've lost track of that conversation. I really will be honest about this. Option 1, 2, 3, what that means, collect the money now, not. I really need some clarity on this, or additional clarity on this, before I want to vote. But Scott, if I can ask you, before we even take any action down that road, is waiting until another council meeting acceptable? Or do you want an answer tonight?
The next council meeting is 2 weeks from tonight.
Did you say 3 weeks?
2 weeks, June 1st.
2 weeks. I guess I'm not sure what we're all handcuffed on. I mean, the first building isn't going to be ready to go in until the third week of June. The only thing I'm worried about is is in-ground work over to those buildings. Heath, you'd have to give me, advice on that, I guess.
Well, you know, we've always had the latitude to exercise foundation-only permits, which allows the developer to proceed at their own risk until the full building permit is able to be issued. We've allowed grading permits to go out. You know, the component Scott's specifically referring to is there's a sanitary sewer main that needs to be extended southerly to this lot 2. Yeah, I guess I don't know. I haven't gotten any circumstances, any projects yet with the city where we would allow sewer main extension ahead of the building permit approval, but I don't see an issue with that.
Okay, Councilman Albertson has his hand up. Councilman?
Well, after having listened now to Scott, I'm thinking a little bit more that number 2 that I had been talking about makes more sense. It sounds to me like he's got this so well covered that if a road is needed, that those 19 people are going to cover it. And so I just don't know exactly why we wouldn't put that out there. And if it puts the city out of sorts a little bit, well, if we're helping those guys and if we're getting things done, I think option number 2 still makes best sense to me.
Kristen, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So with option 3 on the table, I know it's been discussed if we put off the decision tonight. Heath, did you not say, though, that essentially if the council votes to proceed with option 3 and Scott determined that he would rather just proceed to do it himself, he can still do that regardless? Is that not correct?
Well, yeah, I think that's the general understanding here is that if we think we're giving the developer some concessions by collecting the fee in lieu of building the road, and the developer says, no, I just soon build the road. If I'm going to write a check to you guys, I might as well build the road. It's going to inherently fall back to the first option, just build the road as the current development agreement stands.
Right. Okay. I just wanted a clarification that if we pick one of those options, the first one to build the road is still there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Councilman Albertson, did you have another comment or just left your hand up? Okay, there it went. So we do have a motion on the table. If it fails, then the contract stands as it was signed and it's not modified.
Or we could go back
could
and
make another motion.
propose option 2 as another motion. I call the question on this one.
All right. Kristen, roll call vote, please. This is option 3, which is collect the money.
Albertson?
No.
Okay. Bueller?
No.
Hoyer?
Nope.
Pauline?
No.
Lallam?
No.
Ante?
No.
Dembski?
No.
Roby?
No.
Howard?
No.
Motion fails.
Okay, so with no further action, the requirement is he builds the road in order to get a building permit. He won't get a building permit unless he fulfills the development agreement requirements. So are you ready to accept that, or want to make a different motion?
I'm going to move that we offer option 2.
Okay, we have a motion for option 2.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Vilhauer and a second by Albertson. Discussion. Councilman Rademski?
Yeah, I feel option 2 is the best way to go in this situation. I feel a little bit more comfortable knowing there's 19 other owners in this property.
Anyone else? Councilman Roby?
Mayor, from our other comment, the request I thought was reasonable because of the fact that the road probably won't get used for a while. The concern I have is we're going against, or not necessarily against, we're modifying an agreement we had in place, and we have a habit as a city of not following our agreements. So this option 2, which could work, I question, and Keith, if I could fire it your way, what is wrong with the language in our developer agreements when we have these assessments after the fact where nobody seems to understand they are part of the responsibility? Now, in this case, I think they do. But we have other issues where after the fact, nobody wants to pay the assessment. I'll give you an example. I bought some lots. They came with covenants. It's very clear to me what I can and cannot do. I know that when I buy them. What do we have to do with our language so we don't have those issues in the future?
Yeah, that's a good question, Councilman Roby. I think that, that language is in those documents that go with the land. So when a property purchase, somebody's go out to purchase property and their title search occurs and they get all this pile of information from the title search, somewhere in there is going to be this development agreement that got filed at one point in the past. Now, really what it comes down to is, who that individual is, how much homework are they going to do on their own? I think the average property buyer, for the average homeowner, they're not going to dig too deep into that. They're going to rely on their realtors or other professionals to explain things like this to them. I think there's just a communication gap in there as to whether these things get pointed out at the table when they're there to sign the documents to buy the land. Now, when you're talking something a little higher level like this, it's a commercial type use. You're going to have an association involved. The concern becomes less, I would say, that, those people are going to be a little more astute to buying and selling of land. They're going to be a little more astute to what they're locked into when they sign on the dotted line. So I think it just comes down to that communication gap on the level of involvement that any one buyer takes in their purchase of their land. And Matt, I don't know if you want to chime in further on that from the legal perspective.
No, I agree with everything you said there. I mean, I think that what it comes down to is, what it comes down to is at this moment, that little stretch of road is not needed. And so really when push comes to shove for the council sticking to their guns, it's going to be at that moment where that road is needed. And somebody says, well, wait a second, we don't want to pay for that now. The council's got to be willing, whether it's now or the council in 30 years from now, has got to be willing to say that road is going in and you're paying for it. And that's really what it comes down to, because, there's always going to be people coming forward saying, I don't want to pay for things. And we just got to be able to stand our ground and force the issue if they're legally obligated to do it.
Okay, I noticed there was a bike trail section. Is that inside the development agreement? Heath?
I don't know that off the top of my head, Mayor. Do you know, Brandy?
No, but I'll look it up here.
I believe our engineers drew it in there. I'd asked them to and make sure there was plenty of clearance for that to be in there. I don't know if it's in your guys' document, but it was discussed when we did the plan layouts of this development.
Do you know, Scott, if that was discussed back with the first lot development and whether there was any commitments on your part in relation to that pathway?
Oh, it's.
I don't think it even drawn in at that time, but I know we just talked about it on this go around. And to Don Roby's point, I fully agree with Don Roby on what he stated there. The oversight on my part, and it's on me. I mean, I'm in the business of building units, selling those units. Until I went to develop this piece and saw that that chunk was going to be placed in, it just didn't make sense to put the dollar burden on the city at this time to maintain a road that's probably going to be to nowhere for, if not lifetime, for probably the next 30, 40, 50 years. But that was my only point of bringing it up. And keep it green space so we can maintain it and drainage is better and whatnot. But that's the only thing we're bringing this up for.
Okay, there is an item in the development agreement regarding the trail. It's item 2I. It says sidewalks are normally required to be installed in the public right-of-way adjacent to all lots. In lieu of sidewalks, it's proposed to have a bike trail on the west side of Old Highway 139. The developer shall landscape and grade lots so that a trail can be constructed along Old Highway 139. The developer may be assessed for a portion of the trail, not to exceed the equivalent cost of a 5-foot sidewalk at the time of installation. So the grading would be done, approximate grading, so that when the bike trail comes in, it's not a huge task. That was something that should have gone in when it develops. And then when they put the trail in, that's when the typical 5-foot sidewalk would be assessed. The cost of a sidewalk, not the full cost of the bike trail, which is going to be more, but just limited to what a 5-foot sidewalk would cost. So that part isn't proposed to be changed, right, Brandy?
That's right. Yep, that was already in the recorded development agreement for the Williston edition.
So I'm looking for the revised amendment, and you've put an amendment on the agenda, right?
Yep, so the addendum's on the bottom of the agenda packet, but I can share the one. I'm not even sure how that one got on there because we've been editing this one here. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
The one on the agenda packet was the initial one, and then we've since, staff has went through and edited it further because we needed to include the sanitary sewer language, as well as that it would just be with Scott Munger rather than the Williston edition.
Okay, so it's different from what's in the packet, but it doesn't affect the grading for, this doesn't dismiss those requirements not completed yet.
Right. Yep, those would still stand.
Okay. So, did we get a motion and second? And is there any more discussion on that?
Mayor, could I interject one last point?
Sure. Go ahead.
To Councilman Bueller's point early on in relation to option 2, I'd want to ask for Matt's input here if I could quick. Executing this amendment is essentially the developer signing a waiver of right to protest because of the way the amendment would read, correct? If not, what I was going to suggest is that we go ahead and supplement option 2 with a waiver of right to protest.
I think the waiver's in the development agreement already in a different section.
Right.
Well, this is, I mean, it's a little different. I mean, this is actually a contract to perform something in the future. The waiver of right to protest is really what it says. I mean, it's a waiver of them coming forward at the time we're going to choose to assess something through the assessment process. This is a contract that requires them to put this in.
And if we exercise option 2, we're going to strike the requirement to put it in and rely on, I think, the section 2J language that talks about we can assess them later. So that's where I'm wondering if we're going to rely on the assessment language, should we have a waiver plugged in with that?
My understanding was this was just modifying the contract to state that the road will be put in at the time development occurs to the northwest, and maybe I'm misunderstanding that.
Right, and when the mayor was referencing, there is the waiver of right to protest language in the already recorded development agreement, so everything would remain the same. This would just be amending those certain sections in the addendum. That would take out that he was required at any time that the city would assess a property or assess this property that he would have to build this as, he would have to. But this was putting the trigger at when lot 2 was developed. So this just takes that requirement out and then just states that if development warrants it to the north and the west.
But they're paying for it through the assessment project, or process, per the agreement.
Right.
So that's my point. We're still relying on the assessment later on when it comes time for them to pay for this work. If we're gonna rely on the assessment later on, there should probably be a waiver plugged in with that, in my opinion.
You mean in
That
addition
is
to the one that already
in-
exists?
J, it's in the development agreement under J.
Well, and that's what I meant by having this addendum doesn't change the items which weren't touched. That's what I meant by that, because there are other requirements in there, and it says that the developer acknowledges that the city is giving them a building permit or approving the subdivision plat. Developer has to immediately install the stuff and promises to waive any objection to an assessed project. So I think that already exists.
I guess one last thing here. I guess maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing, but the draft I'm looking at, it does not say it'll be constructed through the assessment process. It says the developer will construct. So it puts a specific contractual obligation on them to construct it at the time that the development occurs to the west-northwest. It doesn't say it'll be assessed back to the developer.
No, but that's what the item J says. Developer acknowledges the city has the power to make assessments for local improvements on property adjoining or benefited thereby, to collect same in the manner provided by law, and to fix, determine, and collect penalties for non-payment of any special assessment. Developer agrees that any time in the future the city determines it is necessary or desirous to install, and then it lists all the curb and gutter, sanitary sewer, water main, through an assessed project.
Right, but the catch-all language wouldn't apply if that trigger above that's in the amendment kicks in, which requires them to affirmatively construct the road.
Okay, I thought we put that waiver in every development agreement for the case where the developer defaults and refuses.
Correct. Yeah, no, you're right there. You're right. So the developer is required to, but if they were to default and refuse to, we would still have the legal ability to later on in the agreement assess them for that work.
Right.
But first instance, we would say, hey, you're legally obligated
yes.
to do this.
Yes,
do it.
I see.
But if they refuse to do it, then we would still have that provision that allows us to assess it.
I see. So yes, because it might be cheaper for them 5 years from now or 25 years from now when the road is actually needed. And the city says, build it, or we're going to build it ourselves and assess you for the cost. They can do it cheaper. So they might just go ahead and build it. But if they default on that obligation, we can assess it.
Correct.
All right. Is everyone understanding? Councilman Hoyer.
Yes, I think so, but I'm just going to say this before we hop into this. Unless we can make this very bulletproof, very explicit, meaning extremely clear, I mean, I think this is just foreshadowing what's potentially going to be an issue down the road. Because when there's gray area, there's confusion, then there's a discussion, and then it's going to be a pain in the butt to solve. And then we're going to, it just seems like we're going to drag our feet on it. I just want to make sure that we do have a strong mechanism for making 19 people actually do this, if that time ever comes. And who's to know if there will still be 19 people in these buildings at that time, or if they'll still be open.
Right.
I mean, I hope they do. I hope they don't get hit by a tornado or some crazy thing, but like, that's the concern.
Sure. It's a risk. So I think I'm going to call for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And this is to amend the development agreement. Roll call vote, please. Kristen?
Albertson,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Hoyer,
No.
Boleen,
Aye.
Cullum,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Dembski,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Billhauer,
Aye.
motion carries.
All right, thank you. Item J is appointment of Director of Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Department. And it's been a long time in coming, but the committee agreed to appoint the currently interim director, Terry Kelly, as the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Forestry officially. So that's the item. Need a,
So moved.
have a motion by Helene and a second by Vilhauer. Is there any discussion? Councilman Helene?
I feel like someone should step up and say something for TK. He's done a fantastic job as the interim director. He fully deserves this position. I think he's been doing a wonderful job during this situation with the COVID virus. He's a good man for Watertown. I think we found the right man right at home. So congratulations, TK. Keep up the good work.
And I would add, too, that when he took this position on last fall, since that time, we've gone through a major reorganization of the Park and Rec Department, let alone the COVID situation, that I'm very glad to see TK get this position on a permanent basis now.
We also did the software. Turned the park department upside down. So it's been through a few hurdles. So I have a motion and a second, and all those in favor signify by saying aye. Roll call vote, please, Kristen.
Albertson,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Hoyer,
Aye.
Helene,
Aye.
Lallam,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Billhauer,
Aye.
motion carries.
All right, thank you. Item K is authorization for the mayor to sign the petition to vacate the alley adjacent to lots 15 and 16, block 2 of the original plat of Watertown. And this is the alley east of the TIF plan that was just approved tonight. This land lies between what's currently the County Fair Banquet Hall and the parking lot, which the city is planning to reconstruct into a park. And so because the city is the owner of the adjacent land that the developer wants to vacate, the vacation cannot be considered until the petition is signed by all of the adjacent owners, the city being one. So this does not authorize the vacation. This only authorizes the vacation process to be done. And so if it's approved, I will sign the petition and the planning department will begin the vacation public process. So look for motion on that.
Motion.
I have a motion by Rademski and a second by Helene. Is there any discussion or questions? I don't see any, so I'll look for action. Roll call vote, please. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Kristen?
Albertson,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Hoyer,
Aye.
Helene,
Aye.
Lallam,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Billhauer,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is L, authorization for the mayor to sign local government certification form for the Beacon Center 2020 grant application. And I'll tell you about that one if I get a motion here to have a motion by Helene
Second.
and a second by Rademski. And every year the Beacon Center applies for a grant, and in order to be considered for this grant, the local government has to certify that this is a good plan. And the plan is the grant money will help cover the cost of operations, case management, and services provided to individuals while they're in shelter. It will fund security deposits, rental payments, rental arrears, utility deposits, payments, and arrears. The clients are required to work with the Beacon Center toward goals that they've developed, and the grant can also help offset costs for a victim who is in imminent danger of losing housing. And it's set up to where they can be on the program for 18 months. Purpose is to give them tools to become self-sufficient and graduate from the program. So their request is $33,000. This is not coming from the city. We're just certifying that this does benefit our community, and this is clearly a project that benefits our community. So are there any questions or comments? See none, I will look for action. Roll call vote, please. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Kristen?
Albertson,
Aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Hoyer,
Aye.
Colleen,
Aye.
Lalum,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Roby, Vilhauer,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you. I'm really grateful that the Beacon Center exists in our community. It's a wonderful benefit to us. Item M is approval of temporary general sidewalk business permit for year 2020. So this is a motion to approve the general sidewalk business permit, which I'm requesting, but also a motion to declare a promotion in the city for the period of time when our emergency resolution is in effect. So, and I'll tell you about that in a sec here. Have a motion by Holeen and a second by Rademski. Okay, this is a new permit which I created after visiting with Chris Shilkin of Watertown Development Company. He and I were having our regular meeting and thinking of ways that we can assist our businesses to have business during this time of COVID. And one thing that he asked me is, couldn't we just let all of the businesses just to have their business outside on the sidewalk, like the sidewalk cafes we have downtown, and just let them do it? What would stop us from doing that? And I said, well, we have an ordinance which stops it, which says that you can't display merchandise on the sidewalk except during crazy days or another promotion that the city would call. So I'm calling for a promotion. It will last through the year, and at least as long as the resolution is in effect, and it will allow all businesses to display their merchandise on the sidewalk as long as they agree to comply with a list of conditions. And now these are the general conditions that are required for sidewalk cafes. This doesn't do anything about the alcohol sales. Our sidewalk cafe permits are all tied to alcohol, and this has nothing to do with alcohol. But it's the same kind of requirements for putting things on the sidewalk. You have to leave enough room for people to get through, and you essentially have to agree to follow by our rules and have insurance in case something happens. So they would just sign sign on the dotted line, and they can comply without having to come to the council. Sidewalk cafes require council approval one by one. If there's an alcohol thing involved, that's going to require additional work. But those businesses that don't serve alcohol can just sign this thing and get approval if this passes tonight. So are there any questions? Councilman Hoyer.
I think it's a great idea. I'm just curious if there's anything kind of in regard, just because South Dakota is a very windy state, so anything regarding like littering at all with it? Just risk of refuse getting on the street. I'm still totally pro it. I'm just making sure maybe we have a mechanism that's saying like, hey, clean up after yourself too when you take it all inside.
Yeah, I don't think that's specifically stated, although it's revocable at any time.
Okay.
And if they're letting their stuff blow all around and they're not cooperating, picking up,
Wouldn't wouldn't number 17 apply then too? Federal, state, local laws, I mean, we've got laws about littering.
litter, yeah, if you.
Yeah,
That's true, very true.
Yeah, we just don't enforce that very well
Well,
sometimes.
it might be hard to say where it came from.
Right.
Is the problem.
Sometimes it's not, and we still don't do it, so.
If you want to talk to me afterwards.
Right.
Any other comments or questions? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Roll call vote, please, Kristen.
Okay, Albertson,
Aye.
Euler,
Aye.
Hoyer,
Aye.
Pauline,
Aye.
Lalum,
Aye.
Ante,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Bill Howard.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. And back when we've approved the consent agenda, we moved item 4D, renewal of alcoholic beverage licenses for the period of July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. Move that onto this main agenda, so that's what we're considering now. So we'll take a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Vilhauer and a second by Holeen. And Kristen, would you please tell us about this one?
Yep, thank you, Mayor. These are the malt beverage renewals that are coming due at the end of June. There was a couple that didn't get in, just I think with the situation that is present. So these are kind of some last minute ones, just like the other ones, just a standard renewal. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councilman Roby.
I'll be recusing myself from this one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Roll call vote, please, Kristen.
Albertson,
Aye.
Euler,
Aye.
Hoyer,
Aye.
Pauline,
Aye.
Lalum,
Aye.
Manti,
Aye.
Rademski,
Aye.
Bill Howard.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we're in the old business section. Is there any old business? Don't see any. We have some new business. New business. The first item under new business is, oh, I'm sorry, Jason.
I was brought to my attention, I believe, out to City Park. All they have out there is blue trash receptacles, but they do not have any recyclable receptacles out there. I was approached and asked if they could get a couple of tan containers out there for recyclables.
It's a good idea. At the campground or at?
City Park, yeah, at the campground, I believe it was.
Sure, yeah. Good idea.
Yeah, Jason, I'll make a note and follow up tomorrow.
Thank you, TK. Say, I was going to ask you, and I don't know if it's an IT issue or not, but there seems to be kind of a glare coming off of you there tonight, TK.
But I don't know what you're talking about, Jason. I really don't here. Hey, you know what? Ball is beautiful. I just figured that out today, so.
Jason, I resent that comment.
Thank you, Bruce. That's why he's the liaison right there.
I was
So
just
we stick
wondering,
together.
TK, I was just wondering if you lost your endorsement deal with Titleist, and that's why you're not wearing the hat.
You know, and you guys, and I know we're on public TV, but my text, you would not believe the text. Is that you? Like, what is going on? And I had people saying, we're going to get you new hats that say, make Park and Rec great again, but at least wear the hat. So no, you're not alone in the comments, put it that way, so.
All right, thank you. Is there any
All
other
right,
old business?
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman
Bruce Bueller.
Bueller.
I have a comment for new business. And since Terry's still on, I I took a little drive out to the city park area over the weekend, just kind of look at the North Park and then just kind of look at some of the other areas in the old part of City Park. And I talked to Doug Taken for a while, and Terry, there's a few lots in the older section, 3, 5, and 7, that it appears that every time there's a rain, there's a lot of runoff that collects in those areas. And those are drive-throughs, which are the more premium sites. And I'm just kind of wondering if we should take a look at, and I don't know if this is the year or the time to do it, but I think we need to take a look at trying to fix that if possible. If that requires fill or some sort of drainage plan to mitigate that water that tends to collect in those areas. And it really, I mean, these people are campers in the middle of a swamp. It's like when it does flood. And the other thing I wanted to mention was, and I did talk to Doug about this, is that I would hope, and maybe the intention is that we do open the sites that are good on the north end, because there's several there on the north end that I think we could open up for use. And maybe that's been your intention, Terry. But I do think at least 3, 5, and 7, there might be one more out there on the older part that I think we need to really look at so that we can make those rentable.
Right. And to that, Bruce, you know, that is when we all get caught up, which we don't know when that point's going to be, but I do want to reach out to Heath and his staff and the engineer, shoot elevations, and look at a potential berming system or more drainage ways. Because, yeah, I mean, it's not only the north loop, you're right. The original loop, especially in those pull-throughs, gets hit as bad. That floods as well. But, you know, we do have enough, I guess, fill or sand to let that drain down. But as far as the whole process, I do want to bring Heath in to really look at the whole north loop. You know, I didn't look at opening, you know, a patchwork opening. I think because we need to get contractors in there as soon as we can and start, you know, bringing that back up to speed. And if we have a camper here and there, that's really going to limit what we can do, because I do think we're looking at a complete bring it back down to black dirt, because literally we have cattails growing in there. That needs to be done. We have major water issues. We have major electrical. So I would be hesitant to open up, you know, and this spot, that spot, because if I can get contractors in there, you know, as soon as Heath and I can work together and get an engineering plan, I'd want to move forward. So, but yeah, Heath, I'm going to definitely lean on him for elevations and his expertise and what we can do.
All right, thank
and
you.
Heath, maybe you want to chime in.
Thanks, Terry.
All right, thank you. We'll take a look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be glad to help out. And we've talked about this briefly outside of this discussion through emails. One of the biggest issues out there is the high water level, obviously. And when it does rain in pond, there's nowhere. It's hard to channel that water somewhere through a drainage system because of the high groundwater elevation, and then of course the lake elevation right there next to it. So, but there could be some ways to do some fill. We'd have to do a floodplain development permit and things of that nature that could help accommodate that use. We want to be careful though, we're not just pushing the problem onto another area of our property either, but definitely some things we need to look at and try to improve the best we can.
All right, thank you. Councilman Bueller, your hand is up, or is that from what you just said? I'll take that as you've already spoken. We do have a couple other new business items. The discussion of the revocable curb space reservation permit. I just wanted to let the council know that the mayor has the ability to reserve or allow businesses to reserve the curb space. It's revocable at any time. That's been on our books for a long time. And it doesn't get used very often, but this year being special, I decided to go ahead and actually make a permit form. And I have issued one of these that's temporary for takeout for Gather, just while we're doing the emergency resolution. And if any other businesses would like to have curb space reserved, I would be happy to grant that to other businesses which are trying to help people, trying to keep business going by doing takeout. So they just have to let me know. And yes, Councilman Vilhauer.
My only comment about this, and I understand that we've had this around for a long time, I'm all in favor of the concept. What concerns me a little bit is that the sole authority resides with your office. To me, that seemed like it should be something that should be a collaboration along with the Public Works Director as well as the Chief of Police, rather than just the mayor having that authority.
Well, and the only other time I'm aware of that a mayor has used this was Mayor Williams, and he actually took it to the Public Works Committee and discussed it before he did it. But the ordinance says it's revocable at any time, so a new mayor could come in and yank it. There's no record is the problem, and that's why I created the form, so that there's a record. And I would put on, I actually put on here permit end date, and on the one that I issued to Gather, it ends when the emergency resolution expires. So they don't have it endlessly. But if that's something you'd like to change, I have no problem whatsoever. Most mayors have not been comfortable, including me. And that's why I brought it to the council too, to just let you guys know that I'm doing this. And why I'm doing it. So to change the ordinance though would, I mean, if that's something you want to pursue, we can.
Not, but I just want to throw that thought out. So I guess, you know, see what amounts to going forward as far as how often it is applied for and used, and if it ends up being a problem, I guess we can always address an ordinance change then.
Right, and this year, those businesses, every business in town needs every little bit of help we can give them. And if this makes it easier for people to get takeout, and therefore they spend more money downtown or at a business, then so be it. I'm all for that. And this permit isn't just for downtown. This permit is for anywhere. And the item B is update to the council on the letter sent to federal and state delegation regarding the reallocation of remaining CARES Act funding to airports. And I just wanted to let you know the airport board recommended that I sign this letter and send it off to the delegation, which I did. I sent a letter to Senator Rounds and to Senator Thune and to Representative Johnson and to Governor Noem. There was a mistake in the allocation of CARES Act funding, and they corrected that, which left a whole bunch of money on the table unallocated. And this letter asks them to keep it there in the airport and send it our way. And not to just give it back, but to reallocate the extra money that they found by discovering the mistake. So, anybody have any questions about that? Nope. All right. We're on to liaison member reports. Do we have any liaison member reports? See none. We'll move on to announcements. And I have an announcement to make that this is May 17th through the 23rd is National Public Works Week, and providing for the recognition of all City of Watertown Public Works employees, services, and essential duties that help sustain our community's development, infrastructure, health, safety, and quality of life. I'm making a proclamation, and I will just want to read one little piece of that here. The week is designated as National Public Works Week, and I urge all citizens to join together with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. And I've been a member of the American Public Works Association since 1984, and that is an organization that promotes public works, which is often forgotten. Those are first responders, just like police and fire. If there's an accident, if there's something going on, the public works professionals are right there too, being called out in the middle of the night in inclement conditions to do their job. But I also need to say that this is also EMS week, so we need to recognize our emergency medical services as well for the good things that they do in protecting our community, public safety. So those two things are out there. And one more announcement, we have issued a request for proposals for a recruiter to help us hire a city manager. And Matt put that RFP out and published it, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but June 5th is the date we need proposals back?
Yep, that's correct, June 5th.
Yes, okay. And anybody have any comments or questions about that? All right, are there any other announcements?
Quick one, Mayor, just remember the senior parade Wednesday evening at 7:30 to honor our graduating seniors.
Yes, the same route as the Kai Parade, or is that what we call it now? Homecoming. Whoops.
No, you did right.
Okay, as far as I know, there's no reason to go into executive session pursuant to SDCL, yes?
Sorry, I had an announcement.
Councilman Hoyer?
And then I think Adam might have one too.
Oh,
but-
okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. This is kind of overdue. It's pretty old, but I just thought some good news is always great to share. But so did some private fundraising back in the fall, back when the zoo was going through the accreditation stuff. That fundraiser raised $545. I know that's not a massive sum like our huge donation that was given, but since they're not here, I'll drop that off to them tomorrow. But just on top of that, thank you to everyone that took the time to donate and everyone that's been donating to things in the community. As we kind of go forward here, especially with the zoo just like starting to open back up, I know things are a little different there, but I would encourage folks to, continue to support organizations like that. You can do that through a membership. Even if you're not going to go as much as maybe you usually would, it's those little things that help keep those kinds of organizations going. So
That is
that's all I
true.
had.
Thank you. Thank you for that public service announcement. Councilman Lallam, did you have something?
Yeah, just a quick thing. I know last week, I'm not sure if everyone's aware, was essentially it was Law Enforcement Week. Just a thank you to the police department and the sheriff's department in our area, as well as everyone else that's out there in law enforcement. Just all things they do for us. Just a thank you to them. I don't know if we talked about that at the last meeting or not, but just a thanks to the boys in blue and green, I guess it would be, or brown.
Sure, and there's some girls in there too. Thanks to them too.
And ladies.
Yeah. Men and women. Okay, any other announcements? Not seeing any, so I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Holeen and a second by Vilhauer. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Kristen?
Albert.
Oh, Kristen's gonna do it. Darn, we thought we were gonna get it. Go ahead, Kristen.
I was waiting. Okay, Albertson,
Yeah, aye.
Bueller,
Aye.
Hoyer,
Aye.
Colleen,
Aye.
Lallam,
Aye.
Nancy,
I think she said aye.
oh, okay, Nancy, okay, we're good. Aye. Rudemsky,
Aye.
Roby,
Aye.
Billhauer,
Aye.
motion carries.
All right, thank you. We are adjourned.